Like I do.
You're on. You're on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, patriots across this great republic under God. Tonight, we ask the tough questions. Hawaii's families want to know, could living in paradise be an affordable option for people who live there? Can families actually afford to stay in paradise instead of being priced out of sky-high taxes, housing costs, and government corruption? Tonight at hashtag Town Hall, we are going island to island with a bold leadership fighting for the people. First, slashing costs of living, rooting out waste, restoring faith, family, and freedom in the Aloha State. I am your host, Victoria Thompson, Hawaii State Director for Red America First. As many of you know, the RAF organization is a nonprofit movement dedicated to uniting Christians, patriots, to reclaim America's founding principles of faith, freedom, and constitutional governance. Please use hashtag Town Hall to join our podcasts where you drive the conversation and engage with our guests. You can go to redamericafirst.com/podcast/town hall and get the hard questions answered that you want to know. Before we bring out our lineup of candidates, please let's take a quick moment to like, share, subscribe, and follow to stay in the loop and help us build this movement of patriots going forward. Together, we stand united. We're going to get a prayer, anthem, and do our Pledge of Allegiance before we get to our guest this evening. Pastor, would you please get us started with a word of prayer and
Yes,
help get our hearts and minds ready for this evening?
I'd love to. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord God, I come before your throne. Lord, we come humbly seeking your grace, your mercy, your favor in our lives and in this podcast tonight. As we go through this town hall, we ask you to remind us that we are not here on our own accord. We are not here because of us. We're here for you, by you, through you, and what we have and all we are should point and direct others back to you. So, Lord, that is our desire here and now. As we come, we ask you to move in a mighty way, Holy Spirit, leading us, guiding us, reminding us that our hearts seem to be attuned to your desires, not our own. But what we want from this should be what you want from this. And so we ask you, Lord, that we have open hearts, open eyes, open ears, and open minds to see, to know, to understand what you have for us today as you work through us in this place, helping us, leading us, guiding us as we do our best to lead others towards you. In the holy and precious name we say, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Aaron. Next, national anthem. Looks like we're going to skip the national anthem and go right to our Pledge of Allegiance. I am not quite the singer, so Rob, if you would.
Oh, yeah, I'm not a singer either. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Thank you, Rob from Ohio. All right, we have quite the lineup this evening. We have Gary Cordery running for governor. Gary, thank you for joining us here on Red America First.
Victoria, thank you. Yeah, so thank you for that. We'll get the rhythm here in a moment. Thank you for the Pledge of Allegiance and the flag and the prayer. We're meeting in the name of the King of Heaven. He's the only one that's going to transform this great country, and it happens one by one, individual citizens stepping forward, being the gift that God has called us to be. And so, the honor to be on the show today. Thank you for the invitation. I hope we're going to have a great conversation. The topicality will be based on whatever questions you have. We'll engage. I believe the information is not so much transformative but it's an opportunity for people to take back their government, an opportunity for people to engage once again in their civic responsibility. In Hawaii, we call that kuleana. So
Yes.
glad to be on here, Rob from Ohio of all places. It's getting late over there. So for those of you who are on the east side of the Rockies, mahalos for the commitment to be on the show. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And we usually start with you just kind of giving us a little bit of information about your background and what you're passionate about. If you have anything specific you could share with our
Okay.
audience, that would be great.
Okay. So do you want to break just a little chunks, like 3 or 4 minute pieces, or talk to me about what your vision is, so I can certainly adapt.
So I'm going to ask you, we're going to have a Q&A, but this is just
Okay.
like an introduction. So
Okay.
for people who haven't met you, I met you last week. We've talked, I've gotten on the Gary train, so to speak. So I know you, I've met you, we've had that, connection. But for people who are tuning in first time, and from the feedback I've gotten from the community, they're like, I don't know him.
Yeah. Well,
What is a good way to know and understand you? And I mean, I think the thing that hit home for me when we had met previously was knowing that you've lived in Hawaii for since 1981. I mean,
yeah,
you
45
have
years.
experience.
Yeah. So thank you for that. It gives me some context. Thank you for that, Victoria.
Yeah.
So my name is Gary Cordery, as Victoria mentioned. I'm a husband. My wife's name is Kim Cordery. We're parents, two adult daughters, Rachel and Erica. We have they're married to great young men, Steve and Nathaniel. We have 7 grandkids. They were all born here. Our kids obviously were born and raised here. We moved here in 81. Kim and I, we've been married 45 years. Our kids are raised here. Their grandkids were born here, but about 9 years ago, they decided that Hawaii was just too difficult in terms of the cost of living and getting ahead and the things that young families want to do. And they've decided to make a lateral move to Utah. They did that. And part of the running for the governorship has to do with that. It has to do with outbound migration. It has to do with the people in this great state suffering for a lack of abundance because of bad government policy. But beyond that, my launch, or if I would launch my inclusion in governmental affairs, really happened at the COVID lockdown in 2020, when we started hearing from the government, you'll take a shot or lose your job. These kinds of tyrannical declarations from the government. I knew it was wrong. And there was actually a guy running, a pastor here, Bud Stonebecker, was running for mayor. I've always voted, but I've never been engaged in a campaign. But when I heard about his platform, I thought, this guy, this is my tribe. This is my peeps. His comments resonated with my heart. And so both Kim and I started working in his campaign. When he didn't prevail, we thought, wow, what are we going to do now? We have this group of about 30 patriots who believed in liberty and self-government and individual rights and the Constitution and those kinds of principles. We decided to launch an organization called the Aloha Freedom Coalition. It was an organization to support the rights and promote the rights of individual citizens against government tyranny in all of its forms. That led to a run for governor in 2022. Honestly, it was a response. It was a response of obedience to what God called me. He said, "I want you to run for the horn." Now, we don't have time to go into the background, but there was a lot of unbelievable things that occurred that no one could imagine or you couldn't plan. Nevertheless, that declaration to run for governor I made in 22, I ran. I didn't prevail. I didn't even make it out of the primary, and I really didn't understand why I didn't. How could you not win when God called you to run? This doesn't make sense. That didn't fit my paradigm. Didn't work. So 8 months later, I thought,
At the time.
exactly right. I mean,
Yeah.
you trust and you believe God and you act accordingly.
Yeah.
So time passed. About 2 years ago, I started praying. The fire for justice in our state never went out. It was like the embers of a coal just continuing to burn, and through just a matrix. It lives in me that way. And I did a lot of research, in particular in 22, just had spent a lot of time understanding how the state of Hawaii government actually functions, its constitution, its principles, its power base, its financial methodology, its policymakers. And it was in that process in 22, understanding how government functioned, that it actually translated into 24 and recognized that how we can change the trajectory of this state, because this is a deep blue state. This is as blue as it gets. California and New York may mirror it, but essentially the same DNA, the same big government, hard left principles that govern this state. The state of Hawaii is the first in all the wrong things. And so I started praying about it. I said to my wife, I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about running again. What do you think?" She said, "We need a word."
Was that the factor that made it like it's time to go now, or did you?
Yeah,
it
really was. I had been
Okay.
praying about it. I've been praying about it. That's not like I'm not working. I'm a general contractor. I've never had political office, so it's not like I'm not working and paying the bills. I'm doing that even to this moment. But I woke up in the middle of one night. The light was flashing, not flashing, but it was illuminated 10:36, and the Lord said, "Get up and read Hebrews 10:36." I thought, "Oh,
Wow.
that's pretty interesting." So I got up, went into the bathroom, found my wife's phone, woke it up. Hebrews 10:36 summary: you will persevere, and when you persevere, you'll receive the prize that you've been working for. And I knew as soon as I read that, I just put the phone down and I said, "Got it." Told my wife, "Honey, this is the word. Read this." I went out of the door because I leave early. She was still sleeping. I get up early. I get up at 4:30. Just have that time, that quiet time to get the mind right, get the heart right, be before the King.
And you've also been, so you've been a successful businessman, husband, father, grandfather. You've been here for decades. You build homes, you build schools, you build churches, you're building the island. I mean, that's just the short list, right?
I think the most important part is really understand what it means to be a husband and a father. You really want to know what it takes to have a community that's anchored right, that God works within. He works within community with family, and then all the things that we do to bring that to the forefront in excellence and integrity is really the call. The call really is to live life in excellence and with integrity. And that's the leadership model. That's David's model. I'll go with David's model. So that's a kind of introduction of who I am. I'm 66 years old. People ask me, "Why are you going to run for governor? Well, how about just do a state house seat or maybe a senatorial seat?" I mean, after all, you've never held political office. And I said, "Well, God told me to run for the horn. And besides, I'm 66. I'm not messing around. I don't have time to work up the proverbial political chain. You want to make change in Hawaii, you have to have the executive branch. You have to have the governor's seat. There is no change without that seat." And maybe we'll get into that later, but that's by way of an introduction.
And I see this little lineup right here, me, you, and Margaret, and I'm thinking elections commission, governor, lieutenant governor, like power team, right? Like we're on fire to get it done, do what's right for the people, and that's awesome. I love your passion. I want to go ahead and go to Margaret and have her give her little intro, have a little bit about her, and then I have some questions, and we'll have kind of a debate and have you both kind of answer feedback on it. Margaret is the candidate in Hawaii for lieutenant governor, and you're running Republican as well, yes?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes,
great to meet you face to face finally.
Yes. Good to meet you.
It's been a long road for some. Some have been doing this longer than others. So you are passionate and an advocate for faith, family, and freedom, which we love. Margaret is fighting for cost of living relief, residential housing, education that empowers parents, protection of religious liberties, accountability of government, and putting Hawaii's families ahead of special interests. What can you share with us, Margaret? Tell us something about you. We want to know who you are.
Well, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a mother of 4, and I have 1 grandbaby. I've been in the political arena for 29 years, being a voice for the voiceless. So I haven't been in office, but I've been at the legislature just about every session. And this last session quite a bit, and last year too. So yeah, I always go and speak on behalf of the people. And so I've had a lot of experience. It's, we were talking this morning, we were at the Oahu League of Republican Women this morning, and one of the ladies talked about the war room. And I said, oh yeah, that's what it's like when you're going to the legislature, speaking face to face to some of these senators and representatives. but I always go, I stand for the rights of the local people, religious rights, and most recently, the Keiki rights, which I never thought we'd have to defend Keiki rights.
Yeah.
But there was a bill that was just passed that Governor Green signed last Friday, HB 1875. And I realized, wow, not only are they trying to take away our parental rights, but also rights of our children. And I go into, I mean, I fight against bills that some people won't even touch. They're, you know, sometimes controversial, but it's okay. I want to be a voice for the people. And, you know, when I took the oath, we had to go in, when we signed our papers, we had to take the oath. And, you know, first my oath is to God. And then I vow to the people of Hawaii. I want to maintain the integrity in government. I want accountability. And of course, unity. You know, we can get so much more done when we're united. And even within the party, sometimes there's divisions. And so, yeah, I want to keep everyone united and just focus on the goal. You know, our goal is to get Gary into office as governor. And we want to just work as a team. In the past, I've been a poll watcher for 4 different elections. So I used to live in Mililani, so I helped Lauren Matsumoto. I think it was one of the first times she ran, and I was a poll watcher for her. And then in when I lived in Mililani, in 2015, I was the president of the Leeward Federated Republican Women's Club. And so I remember we were debating, you know, who could win as president. Well, I left, it's supposed to be a secret ballot, but I left my ballot out. And people are like, oh, Margaret, you're nominating Trump. I said, absolutely. So, yeah, I think that we need a lot of changes. We need to clean up a lot. So, I mean, it's going to be hard work, but I'm ready for the challenge.
Good for you. Thank you for everything you're doing. And Gary as well. I appreciate both of you. Because we have 3 total guest speakers tonight, we will have Megeso on, who is running for mayor in Kauai. Would you like to go ahead and make an introduction? I am happy to add you to the panel, Megeso.
Oh, thank you very much.
Do you want me to wait? Keep the best for last.
You can go ahead with Gary and Margaret if you'd like. I think if they
Okay.
have other commitments, because I'll be glad to follow them. But I just wanted to add one thing to Gary, because along with me, we're non-politicians, but we're also businessmen. We've been involved with budgets and these things for most of our lives. What most people don't realize is the state government and the county government are corporations. So we don't need politicians running corporations or businesses. We need business people. So with that, I'll yield back to Gary and Margaret.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Megeso. So yes, please stay tuned in, everybody, for Megeso later. A lot to cover tonight. 3 people. It's going to be a lot, but we're going to get to it. Before we continue, I just wanted to let everybody know who's online. Thank you for joining us this evening. Mahalo for your support. And if you would like, please like, share, and you can go to givesendgo.com/America, RedAmericaFirst /donate to help sponsor platforms like this that give a voice to the people, most engaging platforms where we, the people, have a voice. And thank you again, Gary and Margaret, for joining us. I'm going to go ahead. I have a few questions, and I'll go ahead and just ask the questions, and we'll give it to Gary first and then have Margaret follow in, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
All right.
Yes.
Hawaii is one of the highest costs of living in the nation. You've proposed eliminating the general excise tax, which is really a burden here, on food, medicine, freezing property taxes for kapuna. How would you lead the fight in the governor's office to deliver immediate relief so working families, teachers, nurses, they can actually afford to stay in Hawaii? Because right now we have a mass exodus of people who can't afford to even live here, and we're leaking people left and right. So what are your positions on that?
Yeah, well, great. Thank you, Victoria. I think that you articulated some of them by stating that it's our intention to remove the general excise tax, and people may or may not be aware, but it's a regressive tax. Every time there's a transaction on a good and service here in Hawaii, there's that general excise tax is applied. So it may, when you first hear 4.712, it doesn't seem like a big deal until it gets until it's tripled, or maybe sometimes as many as 4 transactions before that good and services gets to the end of the line, the customer, the individual citizen. So that tax rate is, that's why they call it regressive. It ends up being 18 to 20%. So this has been talked about in our legislative sessions for decades now, but there's never been any governor who's been behind it. What the part of the issue is that you have a large government here with a small population base. We have $20.5 billion budget here in Hawaii. We only have 1.4 million people. So for context, New Hampshire has about 1.4 million people with an $8 billion budget. So the question is, why the need for so many resources? And so the government here in Hawaii invents needs and invents reasons to raise taxes across the spectrum. And what the consequences are, the people can no longer afford to live here. And it goes from everything. So to change that, you have to just start touching every area in our tax base. So we have high gas taxes, we have high property taxes, we have general excise taxes, we have high income tax. Essentially, Hawaii is the highest tax state in the nation. People don't actually realize that because they'll hear about, well, California or New York or whatever, that they're looking strictly at individual income tax. But when you start adding up the various taxes, and then you start adding up things where other states call them taxes, but we call them fees. We don't call them taxes. Things like registering your car or going to a park, or these kinds of things where individual departments have the ability to leverage and apply fees, and those are also taxes. So Hawaii's state government is the worst business climate in the nation. These are not, I'm just making this up, but we also have the highest taxes. So you have to start reining in government, reducing the size and the scope of government, so you reduce its appetite. Because as you mentioned, Hawaii has, for the 5 of the last 6 years, has had a declining population. It's called outbound migration. So the people who can leave, so there's this perfect storm brewing in Hawaii about why it's so difficult to get by. So the people who actually pay taxes also are the ones who are leaving Hawaii. They actually have the financial capacity and ability to make a lateral move to the mainland. The people who are left here are either on entitlement programs and pay no taxes. So the burden of the taxes paid by the people of Hawaii are the, quote, middle class / working families in this state. So most families, I think, as Megeso mentioned in his comment, I'm a general contractor. We have, I think we have 16 employees now. These guys get paid, they work hard, but on Saturday and on Sunday, they work side jobs. There's just not simply enough. And even if their spouse works, there's just not enough. And so these kinds of burdens, this is a bad public policy. I mean, most people who know the scripture know that if there's righteousness in government, the people will prosper. And if there's unrighteousness in government, the people will suffer. And when you see the consequences actually transpiring in people's actual day-to-day lives, sometimes it's hard to connect the dots. It is not hard here. It is not hard to see when you go to the store and you buy a gallon of milk and it's $9, or you buy a green pepper, it's $6. We're talking each, not pound.
Yeah.
So when you start paying, I'm not sure what we're paying now. I filled up my Honda the other day, $112. And so, these are just snapshots, but really what must happen is we must reduce the size of government. So we're actually going to do this thing called, we're going to promote and get rid of the Jones Act. Most people on the U.S. mainland and the continental, if you're not on the state, if you're not on the coast or you're not near a large waterway that's used for commerce, you don't really understand the impact of the Jones Act, but it essentially drives 25% to the cost of every good. So if we were, and Hawaii's been screaming for an exemption for this Jones Act for a couple of decades now, right? The pushback is the maritime and the unions. They push back because this act preserves very high income and permanent job status for them. But we need a smaller government. We need competition in the workforce. We need to remove the Jones Act. So just think of this. if we were able, we will remove the GET tax. That's within the governor's authority to do that kind of work. We're going to freeze property taxes. We have some of the highest property taxes in the nation. But our property taxes, when you look at another community, it's hard to so our property taxes are not that high in relationship to other states. Every state funds their government with different tax structures. But here in Hawaii, because our property values are so high, a median income home in Hawaii is $1 million. So if you're paying property tax on $1 million or a $2 million home, your property taxes, literally my property taxes, are $7,000 a year. That's a lot of money. And so they continue to go up. And as our home prices skyrocket, those who are on fixed incomes, those are people who have retired, they own their home. Their neighbor sells their house for 2, 3, 4 million. 4 million is a stretch, but 2 and 3 is not a stretch. Their property taxes go up because property values go up, and then they can no longer afford to keep their home. So you have to address these things. But if you remove property tax and the Jones Act, you're talking about 30 to 35% cut in goods and services. That's a massive cut. And then you just got to start, you got to start reducing the size and appetite of the government. That's a long answer to a short question.
I appreciate the details, and I know a lot of people, they don't know them. Margaret, did you want to chime in on that? And I was going to give you a little bit of context maybe, or a fact. I actually crunched the numbers. For the budget for 2026, the average person, actually every person in Hawaii, should be seeing over $16,000, between $16,000 and $17,000 of added value to their life. And for a household, which is 2.95 persons per household, that's approximately $47,000 each household should see added. What the common person in Hawaii, works the 9 to 5, what would they do with $47,000 extra? How much better would their living be if they actually saw that value?
Oh, that would be excellent. I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit because I forgot to tell you in the introduction what I do for a living. So
Absolutely.
I'm a businesswoman as well. I own AAA Drywall and Masonry. So yeah, I've been in business since 1988 was when I started my first business. Anyway, so yeah, as far as businesses, so the lieutenant governor has like about 8 different roles or tasks that they do in office. And one of them, the lieutenant governor gets 2 special projects or initiatives. So mine would be education and small business. But to answer this question, I'll focus more on small business. So right now, Hawaii is ranked number 46 for growth as far as small businesses, number 47 for labor costs, or number 38 for office space affordability, number 44 we rank number 44 for availability of human capital, and number 50 for cost of living. So that kind of speaks volumes. Yeah, so we rank number 48 total. The only ones that are less business friendly than us are Maryland and Rhode Island. So Rhode Island's 50, Maryland's 49, we're 48.
No wonder we're leaking people.
Yes.
Right.
They literally can't afford to live here.
Right. And so according to 2026 Wallet Hub study, Hawaii ranked 48 out of 50 states for starting a business, and many new businesses close early. The federal data shows that 1/5 of the businesses close within 1 year, only 1 year. So that's quite a bit. That's we need to do something to support them. We need to deregulate. We of course need to lower the taxes. Yeah, and even location, because if you see, I know different pastors that are looking for a building for churches, and it's just outrageous. And for what they need, and it, they have to compromise. They have to find something smaller or something in a different location than where they want their church. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges, and nearly half of the businesses don't even reach 5 years. So yeah, it's cost of living is very, very much contributes to that. So in Hawaii, we've had Leaky Drive-In shut down. We've had Tamashiro Market in Kalihi. We've had Love's Bakery. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day when Love's Bakery closed.
Wow.
So yeah, we have to do something to keep the small businesses open, because those are the ones that are employing a lot of, the people in Hawaii. So it goes hand in hand. So we definitely need to deregulate, and we need to lower the taxes for businesses.
I agree completely. And now I was gonna ask you also, government transparency. Right now, our elections, the government, I mean, Hawaii is like the worst place I've lived, and I've lived in several, that it's almost blatant how corrupt it is, and people really aren't doing much. What are some of the solutions that Gary and Margaret, you can help bring transparency to that?
Okay. Do you want me to start first, Gary?
Yeah, go
All
ahead.
right. Okay. So I mentioned I was a poll watcher for 4 different elections. So as a poll watcher, you go in before the polls open. So this is when we had polls. Right now on Oahu, we don't have polls any longer. So that's a whole nother story. But when we did have polls, I'd go in at 6:30 in the morning and check the machines. Well, the polls open at 7, but I would find 754 votes on the machine before the polls even open. So I knew there was voter fraud way back in 2010. It's been going on for quite a while. And then when Sean Kawakami out of Mililani was running as a representative, they found a box of ballots overnight. So at midnight when we went to sleep, he was the winner. When we woke up the next morning at 6 a.m., we found out that Marilyn Lee won by 12 votes. And it was like, what? I mean, because he won with the landslide the night before. So I know we have to do things for election integrity. And if you're watching this and you've never been a poll watcher, I just encourage you to be a poll watcher. It does make a difference. Yes, you're one person, but you can make a huge difference. So I think, that's one strategy to keep election integrity. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to do. And I've been talking about election integrity since 2010. And only recently, people are getting on the bandwagon, which is great. I'm not complaining, but it's been going on for quite a while. Yeah. So that definitely.
Did you know that 2010 was actually the year that Scott Nago became our chief elections officer?
Okay.
Funny how those numbers correlate,
Right.
And it's a 4-year term, but yet he's been in for 16 years now.
Yeah.
Kind of begs the question, what else are they hiding?
Correct.
What about you, Gary?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. The fact that we have, Hawaii recently, well, not recently, about a year ago, had the dubious distinction of receiving the accolade of being the most corrupt state in the nation. This is a sad commentary. This was done by a university in, I believe it was in Chicago, but in the Midwest. So that declaration, and as you mentioned a few moments ago, they don't even hide it anymore. They actually just they're corrupt and do corrupt behavior right in the open, right in the open now. They don't even hide it. And in Hawaii, what we really need is we need to bring accountability and transparency. So some of the things that we've been talking about doing and strategizing within the campaign is bringing in an office of transparency and really promoting whistleblower status to a lot of people so that they can actually come forward without the fear of retribution. One of the things that our government does, and it's pretty broad, it goes through the executive branch, legislative branch, but it also gets down into the departments and the commissions, that if you don't toe the line, behave properly, and you raise some red flag about some form of corruption in the government, there is immediate and severe retribution. And it is not uncommon, and I hear stories about it all of the time. So there needs to be an office of transparency where we actually get the feds in here and actually start doging this place. So then Doge is becoming like an acronym for exposing waste and fraud. But in reality, in Hawaii, it's because of the governor's power to a point, and some of the mainland won't understand this, because in most states, these positions of responsibility and ethics and oversight are elected by the people. In Hawaii, everybody is actually selected by the governor, which includes, most importantly, the attorney general, the sheriff, and all of the judges. So when you think about the
Yeah.
people whose sole responsibility is to execute justice, to bring justice on behalf of the people, they are currently selected, they are appointed by the governor. So you basically have the fox watching the chicken coop. It's a green light, because whenever something happens in terms of corruption or mismanagement or waste or fraud or abuse, there's nobody to look, and they'll just turn the other cheek. And that's essentially why we have so much mismanagement of resources. And it is the single biggest stumbling block to bring reformation and restoration and justice back to society and solve the systemic problems. Everybody can talk about the problems. Everybody can talk about them. We got homelessness, we got healthcare, we got housing, we got cost of living, we got education. We have these same systemic problems that have been here since 2000 and beyond. The problem is these agencies have no incentive to actually resolve the solution, because they're benefiting from the problem. And when they benefit from the problem, there's nobody to hold them accountable. And if nobody holds them accountable, they become more and more emboldened to do more and more. And this is exactly what they're doing. It is absolutely out of control. There's not nearly a week and a half goes by now when on the front page of our newspaper, on a newscast, another public official is resigning for some form of corruption or fraud or mismanagement of resources. And the dominoes are starting to fall. We've been waiting for the exposure. And I honestly thought that Tulsi Gabbard, being DNI director from Hawaii, families from Hawaii, I honestly had personal hopes and aspirations that she would bring the weight of the U.S. Federal government on Hawaii and actually expose these things. And now she's not in office anymore. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But there are people looking carefully into election integrity, as you mentioned. And Margaret, thank you for sharing all that. We need an absolute change. Scott Nago has to go. Chair Curtis and Chair Curtis's last term is this term. He's going to be gone. But when you have people tell me, you can win, but how are you going to beat the office of elections? How are you going to ensure that you have integrity in the electoral process? Because currently we don't. So the only antidote is a massive outpouring of the public when it comes time to voting. So just some ideas.
I'm going to comment on that also, because I have been personally, in that fight, and I appreciate you guys being in that fight too. There is an election commission meeting next Wednesday at 10 a.m. I send out flyers to as many people as I can. A lot of people don't know. I was appointed for the Election Accessibility Needs Advisory Committee and abruptly withdrawn, and without any feedback, because they received feedback that I wouldn't be able to get through the advice and consent process, which you have to go through with the Senate. And they never responded to what feedback that was. So it's kind of like, all right, I'm going to run for elections commissioner. You're not sharing it with the people in the elections commission. Candidates are coming out left and right. I'm just going to say that I'm running as a candidate, have two other people running too. It's like whatever awareness we can bring to have people show up to these elections commission meetings, that's where the pressure happens. And the fact that our chief elections officer and our county clerk here on Big Island, Hawaii, are refusing to let us count the 19,000 ballots that have been counted by the state and not the county, even though it has been voted an affirmative vote by the elections commission to hand count those ballots. I have people waiting to count the ballots. They're refusing to even take names and phone numbers. I have people calling the Office of Elections asking, we want to get on the list so we can count on Big Island. They have no list. There's nothing being done about it. They're running out the clock. They hope people, just get tired of pushing. And really, we're the people. We need to show up. We're the ones that bring it together. We're going to fix it. We're going to hold them accountable, and they need to just get out. And at this point, they've been asked to get out. They've been asked to resign. They're not doing it. So guess what? We're going to bring the people. We're going to bring the light, and we're going to make them run. So, Margaret, did you want to chime in on integrity, elections, or any of that? Because that's my little soapbox. I'll try to stay off of it.
Well, no, I appreciate you saying that people should call the Office of Elections, and I'm just going to give the phone number. It's 453-8683, 808, because we're in Hawaii, 808-453-8683. And then as Victoria stated, The meeting is next Wednesday, the election integrity.
10 a.m. And for people to get there easy, tiny URL /Hawaii EC will get you right to that Elections Commission page. And you want to go on the Zoom link. And Hawaii being spread, as you can see the picture behind me of the state of Hawaii, we are the hardest state to unify because we're on islands. That is why we're utilizing this platform. So we can unify the islands so we can make the change, because divided, we don't stand a chance. United, yeah, we can make change happen. And that Elections Commission, that governor position, those are key slots. And having that support team and those people to help you, God bless you, God bless them for stepping up, stepping out. But yeah, calling your Office of Elections. What's going on with the 19,000 ballots? Calling Scott Nago out. I have a whole list of his different violations. He's been in over 16 years. We're not HAVA compliant. They're not counting the ballots. The two people who can open the door and let us count are the Elections Commissioner and the county clerk.
Back to the guests.
So it's a lot of a mess, but at the same time, we're here and we have a common focus. And that is the people need to show up. We're here. We want change. We're ready for this change. People need to show up and make the change happen. Because if they don't say something, Megeso, part of his platform and what he's been doing out on Kauai, the little island down there on the end, he's holding them accountable on an individual level, personally responsible. And that's hard when you're trying to get that across so many islands. So I appreciate you guys coming together and helping with that. I know we can make a change together. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next topic, unless either of you had more.
Next topic's great.
Gary, did you want to chime in some more on that? Have you been to an Elections Commission meeting?
No, I've been on to many of those meetings and sat through hours of them, testified in person, been in, so honestly, you need the governor's seat. You're never going to get confirmation from the Senate or the House leadership. Scott Nago needs to go, and that has to happen from the governor's office. Honestly, we need the governor's office to right this ship. If we don't get it, it's not going to happen.
So here's a loophole there. You might not know. Technically, the chief elections officer is an at-will employee for the Elections Commission. Ralph Cushney, Dylan Andrion, Commissioner Cam, Papalimu, they literally are not getting the applications for people who are applying for that chief elections officer position because Chair Curtis is not sharing that information with them. I found that out when I went in person from Big Island to Oahu and submitted my application in person, because I submitted it twice. Once and all times online and by email, copied everybody on it, and the elections commissioners I do know. See, because if I hadn't met Ralph in Kauai in 2024, literally the day before he filed his lawsuit, I wouldn't know he filed a lawsuit. I wouldn't have his contact information. Andrion, I've done the pig on the Big Island. Because we're all coming together, that's where we're going to be strongest. Yes. And because we can share that information, really, it is one motion. They can do it in one motion to replace the chair. Myself, Carl Dix, and Tamara Mejia have all applied for the chief elections officer position. We don't want it. I don't want it, but it has to change. And if that's what God calls us to do, we do it, and we know when we do it and we show up, it's going to be good, right? We're going to be victorious because we claim victory over that. Yes. So showing up and people.
What question?
If you're watching right now, show up. Elections Commission meeting next Wednesday, June 10th, 10 a.m. And they're scared. They're scared. 5 people, myself, showed up to make testimony in Oahu, and they had to have police oversight. You think they're hiding something? 5 people protesting peacefully and waving signs? I would say yes. So, Gary, did you have anything else to
No, I think we can move on, but I know that Megeso's tried to comment a couple of moments here. If you,
No, the only thing I'd like to say is I'd like Victoria to ask Gary and Margaret more questions so that people can get the.
Yes,
They're really here to hear Gary and Margaret. So if
yes.
you can do more questions, it would be appreciated.
And the next question was going to be about our housing and master plans and how you aim to deliver. You said 15,000 fee simple homes priced between 416, or sorry, $400,000, $600,000 for local families, and how we can cut the red tape.
yeah. Yeah, that's right out of our, that's out of our, that's one of our commitments. You know, people have said to me, you can't do that. Well, yeah, actually, yes, you can do that, because the strategy will be to use existing state-owned lands. And the problem, one of the major issues in Hawaii is the availability of land controlled by the DLNR, Department of Land and Natural Resources, appointed by the governor. So currently, only 5% of Hawaii's total land mass is zoned for any type of development. Currently, 15% is set aside for preservation, and then the governor is trying to raise that to 30% set aside for no development, all preservation land. So there's a number of opportunities, but the state has a great deal of land that is owned by the state, and it can be utilized for development. It just has to have somebody who will take the courage and put it in place. And you can actually, the government can actually do what the federal government does as well. So in Hawaii, we have a crisis in the city in Honolulu, and I'm sure the other counties as well, with building department, Department of Planning and Permitting. You cannot get a permit here within a year. So it's another one of those issues that's killing the individual business and individual homeowner or church and all those things, even the ones that Margaret mentioned. If you can't get a permit, then the cost of your construction goes up from start, your vision, to the actual construction completion. But when you think about housing in Hawaii, we're committed to building 15,000, and that's not all on Oahu. I actually took the time and actually identified state land property that's not being used statewide. So you're going to get some of those units on Kauai, some on Maui, Big Island, Molokai, Oahu, and we're going to use existing state land that's near utilities, and the state will actually provide the land, and the developmental costs will be worked into the budget. In addition to that, and more importantly, I've actually it's for locals only. And honestly, we've had some pushback about saying, well, what is a local? Well, a local person here is anybody who's lived here for 10 years. So they're still going to have to, actually, those young couples are still going to have to go through the mortgage requirement approval process, but 400,000 to 600,000 is likely possible in this market, in this day and age. And more importantly, in addition to that, is we're trying to develop a strategy that maintains a market for local people based on local wages. This is the dilemma in Hawaii. If you have homes that are over $1 million, which the average median price is over $1 million, and you have wages that don't get close to affording that. The AMI does not get you close to affording to go out and buy a home like that. You cannot get a mortgage for it. The issue is not the cost of the house. The issue is actually the monthly mortgage, when you think about it. And there's a number of ways that governments are trying to rein in the cost of housing, because the crisis that's going on in Hawaii is going on in other states as well. It's not just isolated to Hawaii. You can go to any area that's turned into a destination. I heard of things in Utah and wherever, Wyoming and the other Colorado. These localities that have desirable home locations, they're all struggling with the same thing. The cost of the house is more than people can afford. But Hawaii's wages lag far behind its ability to buy a home. So how do we do this without actually violating people's constitutional rights? This is a fundamental principle. People have property rights. It doesn't matter if you're in Nebraska and you want to come to Hawaii and you want to buy somebody's house for $4 million, and you offer some guy $4 million, he's going to sell that house in a heartbeat. The problem is it drives up the cost of the adjacent housing in the community to levels that nobody can afford. So there's great pushback here in Hawaii about eliminating or limiting the ability for non-Hawaiians or non-Hawaiian residents to come here and purchase property. It is one of the things being considered by a number of politicians and county boards. That's unconstitutional. Now, there is something to be said about that from foreign investors. There is a component about that we need to look at separately. They're not covered by those constitutional principles. and they're buying homes here because Hawaii is a destination. We have a very limited property mass. Remember what I said? So some of the things, we're going to change the 5% to 7%. We're going to open up more land for development. That will help ease the pain. But that's a short-term solution. What happens when that 2% is gobbled up?
Yeah.
You're at the same problem. Now you have 7% available for development. When it's gone, then you have the same problem. You haven't solved the problem. So how do you solve the problem? One of the things that developers do here in Hawaii, and they do this in other localities, I'm sure, is that they receive federal tax credits and federal tax subsidies to do development. That allows them to build their development project, fund the project, and sustain a business model for them so they can continue to build more projects. The research that we've been doing is we believe that we can actually take those same federal tax rates and tax credits and apply them to the individual citizen's home purchase. On the mortgage side, on the monthly mortgage side, it's fairly complex. So if a homeowner buys a house for $1 million, let's just say $1 million. So that's about a mortgage of about $6,000 a month, plus or minus. If you're able to apply those kinds of tax credits to the individual home buyer, their mortgage, the cost of the home doesn't change. So you don't have to deal with the property tax.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with like telling individual landowners they can't sell their house. They can't sell their house at a certain cost. What you want to do is you want to lower the mortgage amount. So if you lower the mortgage through tax credits, then the mortgage will be about 50% of what it had been. So a $1 million home, their mortgage is now $3,000, right? And the cost of the home doesn't change. The question then is, how do you afford to buy the house? How do you qualify to buy $1 million house? Well, here in Hawaii, we had a product called Hula May financing. It was under the Abercrombie administration, and it's not actually federally or state-backed loan. It's a guarantee. So if a young couple living in Hawaii can qualify using the 80% or 90% or 100% AMI for this home, they use Hula May to back the mortgage, because Hula May is not looking, the bank is not looking at the cost of the mortgage. The bank looks at, can they afford to make their payment? Their criteria is not the cost of the house. Their criteria is what percentage of their income has to be set aside to make the payment. So we're addressing the payment side, not the mortgage side. And the idea is you don't violate people's constitutional rights on the mortgage side, the ability to buy and sell, while maintaining the market without people's investments and their equities going down the drain. If you tell a person, we're going to use some form of eminent domain, we're going to tell you you have to sell your house for $600,000. Well, that's not constitutional. So those are two of the things that we're looking at carefully. And then finally, we're going to deal with property taxes here in Hawaii. I mentioned earlier property taxes on the kupuna, but we're also going to deal with property taxes for Hawaiian homes leased land and non-Hawaiian homes, Kanaka owned property that are not on the lease. So in other states, you do not have this, right? In Hawaii, we have what's called DHHL, which is Department of Hawaiian Homelands, which was instituted by Prince Kuhio through the Department of Interior, an agreement between the federal government and the state of Hawaii when it was a kingdom, ensuring that there would be leasehold property available for locals, Kanaka, generational Hawaiians. But there's a lot of Kanakas who don't live on leased land.
Mm-hmm.
This is still their land.
How can you help cut that red tape?
This is a very difficult situation, right? So people say, oh, you can't do that. You can actually go back, you can actually deal with the property tax on the non-Hawaiian, on a Hawaiian living on non-leasehold lands. We're going to eliminate those property taxes in their entirety. But you can go back to the Department of Interior, and the criteria, and this has happened before, the criteria to changing that agreement between the state at that time, the Kingdom of Hawaii, and the state, the federal government, the U.S. federal government, was to ensure that there's no loss of benefits. It's the underlying principle of changing DHHL's agreement with the kingdom. It's more complex than that, though, because its current administration is actually trying to remove that designation and therefore defund DHHL. So it's in flux. I'm telling you, this issue is before the people here in Hawaii. It's a kind of a hot button issue. Nevertheless, the people of Hawaii need to be able to afford a home based on their income. And so it's an income-based housing programs supplemented by federal grants, federal tax credits, backed up by state bank guarantees, but not loans. So I need to contextualize it a little better so that people can get their mind around it. But if so, when we do that, it doesn't have a cap. It's not based on 15,000 homes, because 15,000 homes is not nearly enough. We need a housing strategy that will move forward for 50,000 homes and beyond. So that's a lot. That's essentially some of the things that we're looking at for the housing in Hawaii.
Awesome. Appreciate your feedback on that. Margaret, what about you? What do you see in terms of cutting red tape here in Hawaii? Because we know there's a lot of it, right?
Yes, there is a lot of red tape. So I think, I don't know if Gary mentioned this previously, but just about every department has excess or duplicate services. So we definitely need to go through each department and find where there's duplicate services. Sometimes it'll be the city and the county that will overlap, and they're doing the same thing, but one's at the city level, one's at the county and the state level. And so we need to reduce that and just make sure it's not being duplicated. And then of course, all the waste, the excess in the departments. For the Department of Education, I would love to see the excess money, instead of going to bonuses for the higher ups for the administration, I'd love to see that money go down to the teachers. So the teachers are always underpaid, and they pay, talk to teachers all the time, and they buy supplies for the children, they buy snacks for the children. They're buying so much. Some of the children don't have lunch, and they'll buy them lunch. And so I think we really need to make sure our teachers are well taken care of. So that's one thing I'd like to do. And like I said earlier, the lieutenant governor gets 2 special projects or initiatives, and one of mine is education. The other one is small business. So yeah, if you want, I mean, I can elaborate on education if that's okay, or if you want me to do that later.
That's awesome. And I was gonna, ask also, I know you've been really involved with the school's education business. What specific steps do you see that you could take to help restore the parental rights and investing in educational and vocational training with the Kaiki here?
Yes. Well, I think that parents need to be able to choose whether they want to send their child to homeschool. If they want to homeschool them, send them to private school or public school. And so school vouchers would be awesome. I think also the curriculum needs an overhaul. There's too much social education, especially at the elementary level, where they're teaching things that, well, they call it socialization, but it's actually a lot of sexualization. And that's being taught in elementary, middle, and high school. But I'd like to see the elementary school go back to reading, writing, arithmetic, and they no longer teach cursive in the public schools. And all of the founding documents, like the one behind you, they're all written in cursive. So if the children don't know how to write in cursive, how are they going to read in cursive too, right? And
Great point.
so they need to be able to read the Constitution. They need to be able to read the Declaration of Independence. They need to be able to read and memorize the First Amendment so they know their rights. So yeah, I'd love to see that. Also, Gary talks about a lot about bringing Olelo Hawaiian language back in the 3rd grade. I think that's a great idea. I would also have culture, not just the language, but also the culture. And it's really sad because 53% of Hawaiians live in Vegas. They don't live in Hawaii anymore. So we have to really make sure we maintain our language, our culture, for all the people, not just those that are Hawaiian. And then the middle school and high school, I would add trade schools, maybe finance curriculum. Right now, there's a great program at Honolulu Community College, but that's for the college level. But I would love to see a trade school like that at the high school or middle school level.
That's a great idea. What do you think, Gary? How do you see restoring that education and power back to the parents happening?
Yeah, well, that's Margaret. Thank you for those. I think everything that Margaret said is an absolute home run. I think decentralizing education is the most fundamental change that we need to make in Hawaii. Everything in Hawaii is Honolulu centric. In other words, all of the decisions, all the resources, Every power base, every organization comes out of Honolulu, and there are individual counties and the mayors, they have autonomy, they have budgets, but when it comes to education, we have one centralized education piece, the Department of Education for the entire state. So actually, Governor Lingo tried to do this. We need to decentralize education, and every county needs to have its own budget and its own school board. And you need to have remember what we used to call PTA, parent teacher associations, where they actually participate in the educational curriculum and involvement actually in the classroom. So we hear over and over how there's not enough teachers, but it's beyond my imagination why we can't enroll Kapuna to come in and help help a teacher come alongside. And that's because you have unions who don't want these things. You want to maintain a crisis, because if you have a crisis, you can continue to go to the taxpayer and say, we need more resources to fund this crisis. Don't you see the crisis? But in reality, education in Hawaii has been declining for a couple of decades now. So the enrollment in the Department of Education has declined so much that there's a commission figuring out which schools they're going to close. How are they going to consolidate schools because they don't have enough students? At the same time, charter schools have been immersion schools, charter schools, private schools, and most importantly, homeschooling has become a major player in the educational system in Hawaii. And one of the issues that faces the people is currently we're spending $25,000 per student. If you take the total budget at the Department of Education and you divide it by the number of students, it's actually 19.5. But they conveniently don't tell you about retirement and fringe benefits. So when you factor those in, it's 25,000 per student. And the complaint has been for years. How come the money doesn't follow the student? This is taxpayers' money. This is straight out of your pocket. So I think one of the things that needs to change is the resources need to follow the student. Now, there are within the charter schools, immersion schools, and some other schools, some funding from the state, from Department of Education, but it is not at the same level as a regular Department of Education school. And private and homeschoolers are on their own. They get nothing. So fundamental changes, decentralize education, make sure that each individual and you've heard this from other counties before. We need the ability to take care of our own facilities. So capital school improvements, these kinds of things. Somebody in Honolulu has no idea what's going on in Kapa'a. They have no idea. They will never know. And they don't know that the toilets don't flush. And they don't know that their kids are cooking in there because there's no air conditioning or whatever. And there's no vehicle, there's no methodology for actually for the implementation of funding at the local school unless it comes up the chain. The Department of Education has 25 major administrative pieces to oversee education, 25 entire administrative staffs. And you wonder why it's so much money. And Margaret mentioned it earlier. Currently in 2024, the department was fully funded and they didn't hire the teachers. There was $12 million left over between what was funded, between the teachers that were funded and the actual teachers that were hired. They were paid for, they were funded for a certain number. They didn't hire them all. And as Margaret mentioned, they simply wrote administrative rules and took the 12 million and gave administrative bonuses. This is another form of corruption because we have this thing called sunshine law here. It's kind of a joke. It's just a way of saying we're going to provide accountability because there's no audits here. We should talk about audits. We should segue straight into audits. So you have mismanagement at the grossest levels. You hear about this stuff on the news. This $35,000 bribe that the lieutenant governor took, blah, blah, blah. 35 is nothing. It's 35 times 10,000. Then you're in some magnitude. There's about $1 billion of mismanagement, fraud, and waste. And so what needs to happen is these mismanagement pieces, and they happen both at the executive branch, the legislative branch, in the courts, in the departments, and in the commissions. And they're actually, most of them are being funneled now through NGOs. I think it was Megeso who mentioned there was 90, I think he said 90 NGOs. Mayo, you can confirm this. I think he said there was 900.
900.
That's unbelievable. 900 NGOs on Kauai alone. And so these NGOs are receiving vast amounts of money to solve public problems, housing, homelessness, healthcare, all entitlement programs, great ideas. Let's mow the lawn. We're going to have TAT taxes. We're going to take care of the environment. None of this actually happens because at least 20% of this NGO money gets skimmed off the top. And the percentage it actually gets to the person who it's targeted for is in the teens. So we need audits. Currently, we do audit. We have state auditors who audit state projects. I just think about that for a second.
And that was going to be my last question too. Like the frustration of big government and their overreach here in Hawaii is just huge. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, so when you think about that, dynamic,
how do we fix it?
So yeah, you bring in out-of-state auditors. You have to get very aggressive by auditors, and it can't just be like what we do now is we audit programs. As an example, they just had a recent audit on the Kauai, which is an emergency proclamation housing thing issued by the governor, which is a whole other form of mismanagement and waste. Nevertheless, they decided to audit that program. Okay. We need audits. We need audits who audit the administrations. It's a completely different perspective. The administrations are articulating public policy. When the policy doesn't go well, the people start to scream about an audit, but they never go back and audit the administration and find out where the money actually went. Yeah. So we need transparency where all the money is accounted for. If an NGO, I'm not saying that all NGOs are bad. I'm not saying that. Thank God there's people out there who want to get up at 5 in the morning and gather food and put it out there for people. Thank God for them. Yeah. But the folks that are taking 75% of that money and they're putting it somewhere, who knows where, because nobody knows. Yeah. That needs to go to the Attorney General with, by the way, needs to be elected by the people. I mentioned earlier the governor power to appoint. Con is coming up, the Constitutional Convention in Hawaii. We need the Attorney General, the sheriff, and the Department of Education on the ballot, like almost every other state. So when you look at Hawaii's cumulative breakdown, you just start at the low-hanging fruit and start wading into the deep water because it's a lot of water.
There is, and it's deep. What about you, Margaret?
Well, I just
want to holding them accountable and getting past this government overreach.
Well, definitely, when the governor appoints the Board of Education, it's a lot different than when they're elected. So I used to go to the Board of Education meetings when they were elected, and the people would show up and we would speak out against the curriculum or whatever it was, and there would be tons of us. So I remember one Board of Education meeting way back in, I think it was it's really dating me, 1999. And they moved the meeting from Oahu to Kauai because they knew about 200 people were going to show up and complain about they were adding discrimination codes into the Board of Education. So they moved the meeting from Oahu to Kauai because they thought, none of us would go. However, I flew over, I went, 3 of us went together, and we testified at the Board of Education. I brought, because they closed it to the people on Oahu, I brought with me a petition with 900 signatures on it to let them know, hey, this is how the people, this is how we view this proposal to the discrimination codes. So, I've always just been a voice for the people. And I brought the petitions over, and I remember the Kauai newspaper wanted to interview me. Well, on Oahu, I never interviewed with them because they didn't print the truth. But the Garden Isle newspaper wrote a very good article. It was very, shared both sides of the story. It was a great article. But yeah, they acted a lot differently when they're elected than when they're not elected. So if you go to Board of Education meetings now, they don't really care what you say because they're appointed by the governor. So they don't have to worry about losing their seat.
I really appreciate you guys being a voice for the people. I'm going to shift it now to our panel members who had questions. Susie here in Kauai had a question, and then we have Sharon in Pennsylvania. And then after that Q&A, we'll move on to Megeso. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Susie, what do you got?
Aloha. Hello, Gary. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Margaret,
Mahalo.
haven't met you yet. Look forward to meeting you in the near future. I'm just really quickly so glad that you brought up the NGOs because it is such a pervasive problem, and how the people here get duped is they put these wonderful glowing Hawaiian names and
All
warm and
right.
fuzzy, yeah. And they go into the schools, they write down a few names of kids and make promises, and then it delivers. But people and they put local people as the figureheads, and people buy into that, and it's very, very hard to move them. And they get more, and they activate these people. These people become activists. They wear the T-shirts. They show up for this. They show up, and Maui, of course, has just suffered terribly under the strain of the NGO, money laundering infiltration. So I'm just really grateful you brought that up because it's a huge problem in Hawaii, and it's got to be curtailed. It's got to be investigated. The other problem child that I wanted to bring up is the Wall Street real estate conglomerate. If you could touch on that, had a real problem with, of course, the real estate companies trying to buy homes, offering people money for homes, turning them into rentals, turning them to vacation cottages, really eliminating the rental opportunity. I mean, nobody wants a forever rental. Nobody wants that. But with what's going on with the Wall Street real estate companies, corporations, I should say, because they're all kind of molding into one under BlackRock, Vanguard, some of those. And then you've got the whole globalist agenda 2030, which they want to herd everybody into forever rentals in the 15-minute cities. And, we all know where that's going, the digital passports, and you can go into the country, you can go to the beach if you're good for a day, the kind of thing that's coming down the pike. And of course, unfortunately, by the time that people wake up to that, it's really too late. What can you guys do, to be able to curtail this and turn this around, especially, with a moratorium perhaps on some of this buying up by real estate companies, buying up by, these homes by non-residents, the homes that sit idle forever and families can't even get into a guest cottage to rent, so just thought I'd touch on that for you and see where you're at. Thank you.
Susie, that's it is definitely a question on the front of everybody's mind when the housing crisis is so prevalent and the cost of a rental. It's not so much we've spoken essentially about home purchases, but the rental market is suffering the same equation, the same, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, you're pushing $3,000 a month for a rental of a small home. So a couple of things you talked about NGOs, and then you also talked about the Wall Street investment groups. It's very interesting phenomenon going nationally that you have these large homeowners, home builders, home buyers, Wall Street organizations, BlackRock, like that, who are becoming landlords. They're literally global landlords, where they're buying up homes and putting them into some kind of. Honestly, I don't understand exactly how they're doing it. I just know that they're controlling the housing market, and by controlling the housing market, they're determining that cost of rent, the cost of resale. And I know that the Trump administration has been working on this problem. I don't know how we actually do that constitutionally, to be honest with you. It's not an easy solution. I think here locally it's magnified because of the lack of inventory, because of the little bit of land that's actually been available to develop, the 5% that I mentioned earlier. I do think that there needs to be some constraint on in international investors doing the same thing. On the neighbor island, it's a little bit different. On Oahu, you have a lot of these very high-end condominiums, high-rises that are being built in the Kaka'ako area. And these homes, they go for millions. These condos, they go for $1 million, $2 million, and they sit empty. These buildings are essentially empty, and they're being used just for tax purposes. So that doesn't seem to fit the Hawaii model. And when does an individual state make some kind of moves that have actually protect culture? And I think on some of the neighborhoods, Maui County, as an example, has had a very robust dialogue for about 2 years now, since Lahaina. So Lahaina happened, all these homes were they were taken off the market. There were no homes, and so the people were living in hotels, and they were living wherever they could, and the government was supplementing them via FEMA. When it came down to it, the people started to realize that a lot of the homes that were available for rent were actually ADUs, accessory dwelling units. The problem is the problem with that is many of these people build a home, they buy a home, they build an ADU, knowing full well they have to have the rental income of the ADU to actually pay their mortgage. It's just a strategy. Then there are others who come here and they buy a home, they build an ADU, they don't live here, and they rent it out, and they're just using the home and the ADU to make money. These are two different categories. I think that Kauai has just gone through not Kauai, Maui had just gone through this. I saw Mayor Bisson addressing, I don't know if it was the county council, but talking about the fact that they had passed a law. They passed an ordinance that said they're going to maintain and leave those things in place, and they're going to rezone them as hoteliers, which is another way of saying, I don't want to deal with it.
Lord.
They're not going to deal with it. They've actually just designated them as hoteliers. They've actually moved them into a hotel category. And the caveat is they're going to get the resources that are related to that designation. It's a tax. On the other hand, there are clearly people who are taking advantage of the system. When does conscience and morality and virtue and honor and justice and biblical values, when do they intersect with public policy? And this is the struggle for this nation, honestly. The issue is people do not actually recognize that they're there, government leaders, they're there to serve the people, to steward the resources. And when the resources are stretched and stewarded with ungodly behavior, the people suffer. Honestly, Susie, your question is really difficult to solve for a number of reasons. And I think I just talked about a couple of them, but I think there has to be some common sense way to identify what is just and right, and actually have an open conversation and let the people vote. Honestly, at the end of the day, we're a constitutional republic where the individual citizen has the right to vote. And if a community comes together and says, we choose as the general public to limit this kind of investment property, and we're going to vote accordingly, that's the process that we live in. There is no other process that could be just and fair other than the vote. The problem is that's not what we have. You have stakeholders manipulating politicians who in turn are developing these strategies. You mentioned smart cities. You mentioned global World Economic Forum and 2030 plans. All of these things are also injected into this same conversation, and they are legit and they are real and they are totally funded. And so that takes a different tact completely. And that's where executive branch and leadership in the political sphere must step in and say, no, we're not going down that road. There must be an interruption. There must be an interruption to that global plan that desires to surveil and constrain individual citizens and their constitutional rights. If you deal with it at that level, then the government and the stakeholders have no authority to exercise eminent domain and take your property. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. We could talk about NGOs in a moment. Maybe Margaret would like to share.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Margaret.
I just wanted to add on real quick as far as the Wall Street real estate conglomerates. Yeah, I do agree with Gary. We need to constrain foreign investors from moving into Hawaii. Representative Diamond Garcia and Senator Brenton Awa went to Washington, D.C. So I think we would definitely need to collaborate with them and continue what they started there. Also with the 2030 agenda, Hawaii is like, I think we're the one that has most, conformed to the 2030 agenda, which is pretty scary. And I don't know if Gary mentioned yet, but they're building the stadium without a parking lot. And that goes right into the 2030 agenda. So yeah, if you don't know what the 2030 agenda is and you're watching this, you got to Google it, you got to look it up and see what it is, because it's way too much to talk about now, but you need to be informed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Agree.
I'll be talking about it.
Good.
Are you gonna? I was gonna have Sharon go ahead and ask her question for Gary and Margaret and Megeso. You're always welcome to chime in. You got your question, Sharon?
Yes, I'm all set. So I'm in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. We have a huge problem with illegal immigration here, and we are a sanctuary city. I'm curious if you guys, both of you, have that problem there, and what will you do to solve this problem so we actually start helping the people that are here legally.
Sharon, it is a problem here. People don't realize this, but under the Biden administration, they happened there in Pennsylvania as well. Biden made agreements with state governments how much they were going to take. How many illegal aliens or non-citizens are going to be shipped into your neighborhood? How many are going to come? In the middle of the night here in Hawaii, 50,050 came to Hawaii, just dropped off, immediately assimilated, immediately given all the entitlement programs, immediately given, Section 8 housing, foods, SNAPs, food programs, and now they're a part of the entitlement culture here in Hawaii. How do you deal with this? So for me personally, at an event earlier today, a lady asked me, why don't we have flat tax? She was adamant. We need flat tax. I said, that's a really hard one. I can tell you flat tax is hard. I personally think it'd be a great idea. But what you can, then she moved on from flat tax. She moved on to entitlement programs. And what about people who are living who are taking advantage of the system? And honestly, it is rampant here. And the simple solution for me is people who are entitlement programs must work. If they don't work, no funds, period. And I think what you'll find is people who, Sharon, people come here from the U.S. mainland with one-way tickets on a regular basis. We have some of the most generous entitlement programs in the nation. And then you compile that with the beautiful weather and a wonderful environment. So we're an attraction, and we are a sanctuary city, although we're not designated that, but practically from an application perspective, we're definitely a sanctuary city. So I think that the way to terminate or to rein in entitlement programs, and this would include those who come here illegally, because they immediately get government subsistence and government programs to ensure that they're taken care of. And they should never vote, by the way. They should not have voting rights, period. You take away their voting rights, you take away their entitlement programs, and you force them to work. And my guess is that a number of them will leave. And then finally, if they commit a crime, they're deported, period.
That's fair for me.
That would be a start.
I have a question for you, Gary, on that. Based on the homeless population, could you venture a guess on how many of the homeless are actually residents as opposed to non-residents?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know the breakdown. I do know that there are a lot of people here that are part of that 50,000. They're on the street. So, and really to get entitlement programs here, all you have to do is apply for a job somewhere. There's no requirement. I have them all the time. I've had 7 job interviews in a row, confirmed job interviews, where I go into the office to sit down to interview a person who supposedly wants a job. They don't show. 7 in a row. And it's just a criteria. It's to check the box, because if I had an appointment with an employer, then I can go get my entitlement benefits.
Of course.
It's a scam.
Yeah.
It's corruption.
Yeah.
It's a lack. I wonder what it is. It's a lack of courage at the political leadership level to stand against tyranny and corruption and listen, humanity left to itself will head for the gutter every time. It's only the grace of God and redemption and the fact that there's a transformation happens that call people to account and live some kind of a moral, virtuous, biblically based lifestyle that serves to put the other person first. But beyond that, and that's why Hawaii struggles. One of the main reasons why Hawaii struggles is because we have a godless leadership in this state.
I agree. And looks like we got Rosemary. She had a question, and then Becky in Texas. Rosemary, go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned 2030. Actually, that program came out of the original Agenda 21. I don't know if you're familiar with it, because we had a whole group that was fighting that. What do you intend to do to address Agenda 21 or 2030 in order to be able to halt the kind of perceptions that the radicals are aiming to do with it.
Who's your question for?
Well, any of you.
Oh, okay.
That's
Gary, why
fine.
don't you take it first?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that question. 2030 agenda, the application, and Margaret mentioned this earlier, Hawaii as a state leads the nation in the implementation of 2030 agenda principles. We have been passing laws since the 90s, administrative laws since the 90s, implementing the 2030, laying the foundation for the implementation of the 2030. Margaret even mentioned recently that we're building a stadium with no parking lot because it runs right by this rail that we have. And it's called a walk-up stadium. And the idea is it's in compliance with the 2030 agenda. And Governor Green sat in front of the UN. Some of you may have seen this video. He sat in front of the UN right after Lahaina burned, like literally within a week. He said, Hawaii will lead the nation in bringing a smart city to the United States. And he bragged about that. Less than a week later, he stood with President Biden in the embers, the smoldering embers in Lahaina. And he denies this now, but there's the tape out there. He said the state is going to take this land. So when you think about the way that it's been implemented, and now we have, and one of the reasons that we have such a high cost of living here is we have climate change initiatives. There's been an entire agency introduced into the Hawaii general policy that every department, implementation of every policy has to go through climate change initiatives. So when you think about the application of those problems, you think about HOA costs, right? Most people, you may not know what HOA are. Anyway, it's an insurance company.
I happen to be on an HOA, and I am one of the officers here, so I'm very well aware of it.
And we're actually fighting against HOAs.
People are screaming, why are my HOA fees so high? It's more than my mortgage. And HOAs are faced with this. The insurance companies are saying, we're raising your rates because you're out of compliance. Why are the insurance agencies making these declarations? Because they're being driven by government agencies to tell them to bring them into compliance. So they're in turn forcing the HOA and other agencies, other groups, building department, building requirements, building codes, all of these kinds of things are being changed on a regular basis to conform with what? 2030. And so when you start looking at the consequences of the implementation of 2030, they are exceedingly costly. In Hawaii, we have this thing called TAT, what's it? TAT.
Transient accommodations tax.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us about it, Margaret?
Okay, so there was a bill SB 1396 that was introduced last legislative session, and originally they said it was going to cost 77 million a year, but it's actually 100 million per year. And yeah, we were fighting against that bill. It's called the green fee, or they call it the green bill, but it's basically about climate change. And I'm sure most of you on here know that climate change is a hoax. But it's so that they can, the TAT for visitors, it raises an estimated 100 million annually for environmental restoration, wildfire mitigation, and what was the other word? Oh, sustainable tourism infrastructure. So yeah, we were fighting that one really hard. There's a lot of lawsuits that they said were going to come up for this. I know the cruise ships were very upset about it. So I'm sure there's lawsuits by now, but it's SB 1396 and it was passed last legislative session.
So my point in raising that distinction is it's just another implementation of 2030. And by the way, those resources, $100+ million, they are not going to environmental protection. They're going to things like promoting tourism.
Yeah. Tourism, which costs too much to tour.
Yeah, it's a disconnect between what is said and what's actually done. It's corruption. Yeah. So And actually, even on Kauai, they have their own separate 3% TAT. I didn't even know that until recently. So individual counties, by the way, individual counties in Hawaii have the authority to tax and levy and fee and regulate. And so when you have the state government with some of the highest rates and then individual counties exercising their authority, because I can tell you, the individual counties, such as Maui in particular, and Kauai as well, Megeso, you got to become mayor. They are deeply blue and committed to this agenda, and all they really want is they want the super rich and Costco.
I'm going to be talking about how we got here in regards to that, from a county perspective up to the state.
Well, I got some questions over here.
I forgot to turn off the stove, didn't I?
I know, but when after I have my time.
I got. I don't know if Becky's before me, but I'm ready.
Becky, do you want to chime in before we let Ashley at it?
Sure. I don't really understand the political structure of Hawaii, but my nephew Tyler is married to Kalei Akaka, and my understanding is the Akaka family is huge into politics. That her grandfather is the late Senator Daniel Akaka, and my question is, since they're like a political family, do you see them as being more of a hindrance or a likely asset to your objectives?
There's so recently, even last week, my wife and I drove down into Waikiki area and just recognized that Hawaii is now a third world country. That breaks my heart to say that. We live in a cabal here where nepotism, favoritism, cronyism, who you know, is far more important than merit, justice, what is just and right. It is far more important. And actually, Daniel Akaka and Daniel Inouye were the stalwart senators for decades. Whatever they were exceedingly powerful U.S. senators, and they brought much change to Hawaii. I think their influence has waned. It's been a couple of generations now. Their family is still involved in politics at some level, and their name brand, that brand, is still powerful in public circles here. They don't carry the authority that they used to, but they were forerunners of what we have now. I don't believe that. It's kind of like what Victoria mentioned a minute ago about Scott Nago and being a quote civil servant. Well, he's a civil servant as long as the governor picks him. Then he's a civil servant. Otherwise, he's not a civil servant. Because if the governor doesn't like him, then the attorney general just finds him a way for him to get a new job. That's exactly how it works. So when you think about public service here, the political landscape in Hawaii, it is definitely a machine. If you don't toe the line as a Democratic senator or legislator here in Hawaii, you get sent to the back 40. If you do toe the line, you slowly make your wake up the proverbial power ladder until you get to some place where you get the finest chair at the restaurants and you get the cases of wine delivered to your office. That's how it rolls. And then you end up with, and when you're done, you get an appointment to a nice commission. You're a UH Board of Regents or you're Bishop of State or something like this, and you have a fat pension. And we sing Kumbaya, and everybody pulls up to the trough of corruption, and we drink some more. This is what that's like in Hawaii. That's a pretty sober description. I think it's as straightforward and as honest. I don't think I've exaggerated at all. I have understated how bad it is here.
Yeah, it's
I thank
exceptionally
you for
bad.
that. They seem
Did
to be
you
a
wanna-
family of Democrats, so I was just curious. Kalei seems to be a little bit leaning towards the right of the Democrat Party, and I know my nephew was raised conservative, so I was kind of curious about that. But thank you.
Well, I mean, so the caveat to that is there are people across the spectrum who are just and right. So it can't be a blanket statement. I made it a blanket statement, so that was wrong. So please forgive me for that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the vast majority of people in political office here are a part of a machine. There are outliers, but they never make it up the machine. I can just tell you that.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Of course. Thank you for the
Thank
question.
you, Becky. Ashley, you had a question?
Yes, I do.
For?
My question is for Gary. Shoot, hang on.
And if Ashley's not available,
My question is for Gary. Gary, how are you going to navigate both upper and lower chambers being obviously super Democrat majority, and then your attorney general as well? How are you going to navigate that situation? Thank you.
Yeah, well, great question. You know, that is a dilemma. You know, so fortunately, there's been a little movement over the last couple of iterations, election cycles, where you're seeing a little more traction on the Republican side. There's now 10 Republicans in the House of Representatives, and there's two in the Senate. We really need 17. We need 17 in the House so that we can sustain a veto. I can tell you though that the decision to run did not rest solely on that, but the vision to run represents a change in strategy on how to govern a state, because public policy in Hawaii is not made through the legislative body. Legislators pass law and allocate resources. Public policy, on the other hand, is generated through the departments. So the Department of Education, Transportation, DLNR, whatever the department we're talking about, all of them. That's where public policy is actually launched and implemented. And in that realm, the governor actually nominates and selects every department head and every department director and every department deputy director, every commission, every judge, and I mentioned earlier the attorney general and sheriff. So if that's true, the departments and their objectives are coming directly from the governor's office. They are. Whatever that person's ideology is, that will be reflected in the director, the deputy director, and the objective is to put in place the director, deputy director, and a couple of layers into the administration, people who are willing to change the trajectory of that department. It doesn't mean you have to cancel the entire department. It means you have to bring order, you have to bring audits and transparency to those departments, so that when there's services that are supposed to be administrated by that department, they're actually done so. And then those who are corrupt will find the exit on the stage right. One of the issues is a lot of these directors have to be confirmed by the Senate. This is a problem. So this is politics. Maybe you have a first and a second, third choice on the bench as a governor. I'm gonna say this is my pick. Let's say it's Victoria. Victoria, we want Victoria to be director of education in Hawaii. And so we submit Victoria's name. It goes before the Senate for confirmation. She said, well, I really love Victoria. She's super smart. You know, I think she'd probably do a great job, but we don't like her. Denied. So then we say, wow, that's, you know, it was my choice. But as a matter of fact, turns out we have Megeso. He's on the bench. And we do the same thing. We promote Megeso. We make him like the best thing since sliced bread. We send him up for confirmation. They say, wow, the Megeso is good, just like Victoria, but we don't like him either. So then we just say, you know what? We're going to hold off on that department director appointment. We're actually going to select Margaret as the deputy director of that department. Margaret can be selected by the governor as deputy director and act as director for an indeterminate amount of time. So that means that we can still provide direction out of that department with a director, a deputy director who didn't have to be confirmed. So it's a strategy. And there's another couple of the finesse pieces that we're looking at, but essentially we're going to reach across the aisle. We need to work with the people. We're not going to throw the gauntlet down and say, forgive my language, screw you. You're never going to play ball in an authentic way. We're going to extend the hand of opportunity and roll them with public policy. It makes sense for the people. If they want to play, good. If they don't want to play, then we'll put up with it. And that's what we're going to do.
Kick them out.
Kick them out. And the attorney general I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that the attorney general gets on the ballot on the con. And if we can get the attorney general and the sheriff and the director of education elected by the people, we've changed Hawaii for generations.
Agree 100%. Looks like we got one more. Jim in Nebraska. What is your question?
Well, I was going to say there is something that I need to explain, I think, or at least, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
You got
But
30 seconds to ask a question. So are you able to
okay,
narrow it down to like 30 seconds?
yeah,
Okay.
Democrats are a captured party. They are Marxists, whether they realize it or not. Marxists exist for one reason and one reason only, and that's to pose as a legitimate government while being a mafia-like organization.
Yeah.
And that's why you see what you see. They don't have any interest whatsoever in being an actual legitimate government. They want to be like the mafia and use the government as cover for themselves and their fraud. That is all that they are. That's all any Marxist government anywhere is. And the reason they lie about being Marxists is they'll deny it till the cows come home, is because that's part of their cover. No, we're Democrat. No, you're not. You're Marxists.
Aren't the
And
Republicans
when
doing that
you
too?
no,
Okay.
I mean there are rhinos that are Democrats who, like, for example, we've gotten rid of 3 of them. They're Democrats who pose as Republicans and run as Republicans in order to take office and get elected, but vote Democrat the whole damn time. So yeah, that goes on. Absolutely. But they're still part of that same mafia-like organization. And the sooner people realize that, I mean, all the stuff you just talked about, all you're doing is playing games with them. You know what I mean? You're playing their game. And that's why you always get beat. And I just wanted to point that out because until you're ready to do what needs to be done, it ain't going to happen. You're going to lose every single time because they are the mafia.
So do you think there can be unity then? Is that what you're kind of asking, is how to get that unity?
You know, I
Or
don't know
just
because
to
of
give
the
up?
propaganda. I don't know because of the propaganda. What it takes is for people to actually know and understand the truth rather than buying into this left versus right thing and all that kind of stuff. That's what confuses you, and they use it to confuse you. That's why it's there.
So what's the question
It's
then?
to obfuscate and lie.
Okay.
Well, my
So
question
being
is,
a
are you willing to do what's got to be done? Which is, like, for example, when he was talking about appointing, okay, you get the governor, you appoint your people. Well, it takes more than that. The person you appointed, they have to clear out all the bureaucrats under them and appoint their own people, their own staff that they trust each time. And until
well,
that's done, you're going to get nowhere because the staff is always going to undermine you because they're part of that mafia. Do you see?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're pretty clear-minded. I think I use the synonym cabal, mafia cabal, basically the same thing. And I also mentioned that you have to go 3 or 4 layers into the administrative pieces before you start breaking up the bureaucracy and the cabal within the independent department. It's going to be hard. Like I'm not with my eyes wide, with my eyes shut. Everybody knows this is a high stakes gamble to change the trajectory of a state. It's going to take a great deal of courage and wisdom to do that and hope that others will step up to join this fight. But there is no option. It's not like we have an option. You
Part,
must fight.
part, part of that starts at the county because each county has its own mafia. Each island has its own mafia. So that's the cabal. That's the link you're talking about. That's at the head. The head of the snake currently is our governor, Governor Green, attached to the United Nations at the hip.
Yes.
And it trickles down because he appoints every position. The one that gets me the most is the infamous mayor on Molokai, the only one that's appointed by the governor, not elected by the people, because of the leper colony. She also doubles as the Department of Health and Human Services. So it's a dual position. That's where a lot of your questionable activity can go through, that small area of Molokai. Because Molokai falls under Maui in terms of countyship, except for this one mayor, Libby Char.
Sounds like a lot
Libby
of
Char,
corruption we got going on.
Libby Char is the mayor of Molokai. I did not know that.
Not the mayor of Molokai, the mayor of I forget the actual city. She's the head of Department of Health and Human Services and the mayor appointed by the governor in the area of the leper colony.
The plot thickens.
That is the gray area where the Obama birth certificate came from.
Right. Wow. That is heavy.
Who would handle the birth certificate? The Department of Health and Human Services. And if you remember, years back, there was a plane crash.
Right.
Loretta Fuddy,
Mm-hmm.
who was she was called to participate in that questionable birth certificate of Obama. And the plane went down and she was the only one that died. 8 other people on that plane survived. Coincidence? Maybe so, maybe not. So, as Gary said, and as I know, I've been talking ever since I've been on these islands about the corruption that exists here. And that's why I'm running.
Yeah. We all have our pillars and our soapboxes, and you're all appreciated. I had one last question for Gary. What did you think about your coming to town hall tonight? Your experience.
Well, it's I think it's such an honor to talk to people. It is. Thank you for this invitation. For me, actually, the Q&A is by far the most important part. To be able to listen to what's going on, what's on people's minds. We do a Zoom call every other Monday night on the campaign. Sometimes there's 20 people, sometimes there's over 100 people. You can go to Gary Cordery for Governor. On the Zoom link, the Zoom's on the website. You can join the campaign. It's an honest. We'll spend about 30, 40 minutes talking about the structure of Hawaii and its Q&A, and it is powerful. And it's very similar to this platform. As an opportunity to have an honest conversation about what really matters, and the more real and the more enlightenment that we can share with the citizenry and the general public, it's empowerment. I also have a radio show on Saturday mornings called the Freedom Hour. It's on KHVH AM 830 at 8 a.m. every Saturday morning. It's a live call-in show. We broadcast here live locally. Doug Pasek and I. It's the same kind of a format. People call in. Obviously, it doesn't have a video component, but the idea is the same: to uphold, promote people's individual rights. So that that declaration behind your head, Victoria, we the people are the antidote to all of these problems. And they may seem overwhelming, but you should never underestimate the power of one. And when you make the power of one and you have unity, there is nothing impossible. So thank you for this. To be on this call is an honor for me. I'm grateful for it. I'm glad it worked out.
Would you come back and do another show with us another time?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. And again, it's Gary Cordery for governor.com or votecordery.com. You
can do votecordery.com or Gary Cordery for governor.com. Either one will take you to the website, and then the link is embedded right in the website. If you sign up in the website and you check these 2 boxes at the bottom, you'll get emails and SMS so you know what's happening.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for coming to our town hall. And I will ask on behalf of Rosemary, she does like to add stuff to our magazine. If you would like, we can get you connected if you have stuff to feature in our magazine. And then Margaret, thank you also for attending the town hall. How was your experience? Would you come back again?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was very good. I really enjoyed it, especially the questions. And my website is Mejia 2026 lieutenantgovernor.org. It's Mejia, Mejia 2026 lieutenantgovernor.org. But yeah,
Lieutenant
thank you for having me. No, lieutenant is LT.
LT.
Yeah, I didn't want to have you type too long.
It's recorded. I just try to type quickly.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. You are more than welcome to stay and join us in our panel. I want to get Megeso up here on the stage. He's got a fabulous message and more to share. Again, thank you for coming and joining us. Please keep us posted and let us know how we can help your campaign. Megeso, welcome again. This
Wow.
time in a different capacity, yeah?
What a show.
Right?
What,
Triple header tonight.
what I'm going to talk about is going to build upon everything that Gary and Margaret were sharing from a county perspective.
Awesome. Do you want to go ahead and give the people the intel, or do you want me to do a
Here we
formal?
go. Well, the people that don't know me, my name is Megeso Denis, and I have 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls, and 4 grandchildren. So I can't keep up with Gary. That's quite a list he has. I'm a former Fortune 500 business man, but I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire on the Connecticut River, where they said that no one ever leaves the town. Everyone stays here, works in the steel factory like my father did for 31 years. And I left and took my first job in the big city. So I went from 15,000 people to 15 million people overnight. And I've always been able to adapt to any situation. My background is in business management, education background as well, accounting and commerce, biotechnology manufacturing. So when COVID came, I had a little bit of knowledge of what was going on there. I'm a life coach. I've coached, started youth soccer programs age 5 to 30 for boys and girls. Well, they're not youth at 30, but coached them as well. Created 2 soccer leagues as well. Non-profits are into that. I'm also a mentor and I'm a consultant. So when they say, "Well, you're not a politician, so what do you know about government?" Well, the company I worked for was the largest Fortune 500 company at that time, General Instrument Corporation, and we had a lot of government contracts. And one thing when we went into, and I'm in the computer industry, when we went in to do installations at those facilities, the government equipment was obsolete compared to the banks and insurance companies and our other clients. And we were dealing with high-end clients. For example, our equipment was optical character recognition or optical mark sense recognition. That's your voting machines. So I know the technology. And when the election became in question in 2022, I asked specific questions from my background to Scott Nago and them in a FOIA and got 0 answers. Nothing came back. So
Wow.
I know about the modems. I knew the votes were counted in Texas. That were transmitted on USB. So there wasn't anything they could pull over me in terms of the election or in terms of COVID. Because my platform, and I'm going to show you how the United Nations and everything ties in together. So my platform, for example, is the economy, cost of living.
People first, yeah?
People first, and then it's housing,
Amen.
infrastructure, and people's rights. Well, all those things, if we look at people's rights just for a snapshot right at the second, were imposed upon, were taken away from us, infringed and usurped by the United Nations. What? How did that happen? Well, way back in 2010, Governor Abercrombie stood before a council of businessmen and politicians and said, "Would anyone like to buy a piece of paradise?" And paradise became for sale at that point to the corporations, to the big bidders. Then in 2012, and I'm going to bring in some of my opponents as well because they've been in politics 10 to 16 years on this island. So they're all part of this taking place, unfolding. So in 2012, Obama had asked Abercrombie to get into the climate change initiative, the climate change program. So they came to Kauai and met with our mayor at that time, Bernard Cavallo. And Bernard then called a conference with the other mayors, and then came in a company called ICLEI, International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. They're an NGO for the United Nations. I just got confirmation in the background. So when they came in, they literally took over our government. They took the power away from the county, the people, unbeknownst to the people. So in ICLEI,
can I interject for a second? So you're people first, and you're running for mayor, and you're a corruption pillar. So why, and the people, a lot of people are afraid, right, of their homes being taken away, their land being taken away. Why do you believe that islanders should no longer fear losing their homes or their way of life to tourism and high cost of living? What gives you hope?
I don't have hope. I have faith. It's a big difference. Okay.
It is. It is. Both together, you can move mountains, right?
I'm well aware of the hierarchy of law, and the highest law is right up there with our creator. So it trickles down. Those are our retained rights. Our retained rights are our unalienable God-given rights and our natural rights. Those rights did not come from government. Bottom line. That's where your freedom of choice is. That's where your medical freedom is. That's where your parental authority lies. So all this narrative that they throw at people is to take them away from what already is theirs, that was given to them at birth, from the time they took their first breath. So we have to get rid of the cancer. That's why I'm explaining where it came from on this island of Kauai County. Okay.
That's a lot of history to cover.
And how it fits, no, it'll be a snapshot, how it fits into the housing, how it fits into the infrastructure, how it fits into the rights. So when they brought in the climate change initiative, which we know is a hoax, thank you, Margaret. Yes, it is a hoax.
Yeah.
People are buying it hook, line, and sinker, and most of the world has debunked it now, including Bill Gates and all of them. But for some reason, people in Hawaii haven't got the message yet because of our governor and his control. Okay. So when you look at infrastructure and you look at housing, it's all around the control by the United Nations. ICLEI is just one arm of that. There was a group called Malmo. They were the ones to convert all the farms to electricity by the year 2027. Okay, they have since changed their name as well. But it's all part of this Agenda 21, which went into the 2030, 27, 2030 initiative. Okay, so I'm a numbers guy. And I've got to produce results as a businessman. Okay. I can't vote myself a raise like our county council can during COVID. Vote themselves a raise while people are suffering paycheck to paycheck, okay, to survive, and they vote themselves a raise. No. So again, the corporation, the county is a corporation. The state is a corporation. That's all you need to know. Okay. We're under
so
maritime.
How would you merge corporation and sovereignty?
We're under maritime law. Maritime law is 12 miles out at sea. We're under
Isn't
the
Kauai
supreme,
surrounded completely?
we're under the supreme law of the land. That's where the constitutions comes in. The Hawaiian state constitutions. Those are the rights that were infringed upon. Our first, 4th, 5th, 7th, 9th, 10th, 14th. Okay, same thing on the state level. Our officials don't know that mandates and proclamations are not law. Okay, the Constitution is never waived, even in the time of war or in the time of a pandemic, perceived or real. Okay, so when I look at my platform of economy, I go, wow, our budget is $504 million on Kauai. $378 million goes to salaries, wages, and benefits. That leaves 126 million for the rest of it, housing, infrastructure, whatever. They said, well, we'll raise the housing thing from 500,000 to 1 million. That's a joke. $1 million is not going to solve the problem. Okay?
Not when you have a $25 billion budget. That's like a drop in the bucket.
It's not going to solve the housing. So
No.
how do we improve the economy and cost of living here? Well, the salaries are one, so those are non-producing positions. So they need to be reallocated into producing positions to take care of what I look at as island independence. We need food independence, not food sovereignty, food independence. 90% of our goods come from outside the island. Okay. So now you're looking at, well, if there's weather problems or this problems or that, we're not going to get the supplies that we need. We need to grow more food. But the plan was to destroy the farmers. They want them to build up all the infrastructure, electrify, or most of them are hybrid farms. That's the only way they can survive. And then when it's all developed, they come in and take it over. They create, I think the newest bill was the infestation law, where they can say, oh, you got a beetle crisis, or now it's ticks. You want to bring ticks in so you don't eat meat and hurt the cows and all that. And then you had the mosquitoes, So they don't even need your permission. They can come in and take your land away. Just like that. Eminent domain, whatever they want to do because of the power of the mafia, the power of the control of you. And that started with our former mayor, Denis, who was mayor for 10 years and then went to the county council, still serving on the county council. And he had his own.
It's like they find the bad actors and they just implant them permanently, yeah?
Right. And he was actually using taxpayer money to put gas in his own vehicle. And he got called out on that and got called to the table. And when he got called to the table, he pleaded the Fifth Amendment. Now, is this a person you want leading your county?
Exactly. Those are the kinds of people we don't want leading our county. How do you plan to balance that? Like, what can you do as mayor in Kauai to do that?
When you come in as mayor under the People First governance, when we go before the department heads, like Gary said, we want to work with people. We want them to, and people do want to do the right thing for the most part. But if your leaders are infected or toxic, that trickles down to the workforce. As a businessman, I want happy employees. I want happy clients and customers. Okay? When the people are happy and the customers are happy, things are abundant, things are flourishing.
Yeah.
It's intentional, it's systematic. They do not want us to flourish because, as we're alluding to, we talked to before, they want this smart city concept. So this affordable housing, if you would, they call it workforce housing. I call it enslavement camps, okay? Because the workforce housing is part of the structure of the smart city where everybody's living all on top of each other, right? Now you're into the social credit system. Now you're going to eat the food that we tell you to eat because we just took your farms away because they were non-compliant. And as a businessman, to go back to politics, I was involved in regulatory compliance. I was involved as the head of staffs with head of education, logistics, manufacturing, all aspects of business, which far exceed government. Because government just, like of those $378 million, those people are just passing paper. They're rubber stamping. Our own county council guy in a town hall the other night said, we don't have any power as a member of the county council. And why are we paying you $70,000 a year for a part-time job? 7 people. That's $490,000.
How are they getting paid and I'm not getting paid?
Okay.
That's the real question. Where do we get that sustainability for the people?
Yeah, remember they voted themselves a raise. Okay.
I do.
No checks and balances. Okay. So there's your affordable housing. But when you look at housing as a whole, it's 4 categories. It's homeless, it's unemployed houseless, employed houseless, and the kapuna. It's not one lump sum, right?
Okay.
So the homeless have their own needs. They need dignity, they need trade, and they need healing, and they need counseling. And that should be on site with its own medical facility on site to take care of their needs with, I'll call it campus housing, tiny homes. Okay. So they're also learning a trade. The
Okay.
houseless community is different, but they shouldn't be all in this smart
Correct.
city concept. They should be
Yeah.
detached homes. They should be detached homes with a little garden plot and a kapuna cottage next to it so the family stays together. Okay? The kapuna need dignity in their waning years, and they need to be involved. We cannot discount the wisdom that comes from our kapuna. Okay?
Oh, absolutely
So
not.
when you look at the infrastructure to tie the kapuna into that, when you look at the moku and the ahapoa'a system, we have the most sophisticated system in the world for self-sustainability to take care of ourselves. And that was run by a kapuna council, and the ali'i or the konohiki managed the watersheds and the water flow and all that. They took that all away. They started diverting water, started creating all these problems that we have, because what does that do? It creates non-governmental organizations. Because now we have a problem, so government's got to create a department, then they got to farm it out to a third party. So there's your non-governmental organizations, of which a lot of them are doing good work. We're not saying they're all bad, but then there's a handful of them that are used as money laundering operations. Let's get real. Okay. So your taxpayer money is constantly being taken away. I mean, the cost of living doesn't need to be this high here. It's all systematic. It's all controlled by the mafia, by the United Nations at this time. So that goes back to our rights, our retained rights and our constitutional rights. People need to know they have the power. The people are the government. So when I come in as mayor, I want to talk to each of the department heads, and I want to let them know that we're here to serve the people, that everything we do, we look, how does it benefit the people, or how does it hurt the people? And if it isn't benefiting the people, we're not doing it. And then we're going to look at, where's this money going? There's probably a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse that exists here. Let's look into that, okay? And let's reallocate that waste to people first projects. So when I look at the unions, I go, the unions are protected, right? The jobs are protected. They get a good wage. They get a good salary. So I'm reaching out right here now to you, the unions. Your brothers and sisters are hurting. They don't have the protections that you have, but you have the power to stand up to the corrupt leadership because you are unionized. You are a united force. Well, now it's time to unite your brothers and sisters on the island.
How are you going to do that? And I know mayors versus governors have more hands-on, and with our island being, spread apart, I mean, you're the head of the whole island.
Right. Once we have the department heads on board, we're not going to sit in our ivory tower. Okay.
Okay. Time to get to work.
And collect our paycheck. No, we're going to be out in the neighborhood centers or in town halls or in the community saying, how can we improve the infrastructure of your neighborhood? How do we improve the quality of life in the community? It starts from the ground. It starts from the ground floor up. Healthy neighborhood, healthy community, healthy island, healthy county. This isn't rocket science, okay? It's a controlled, systematic program they have in place to keep us oppressed, to keep us fighting amongst each other, to throw the politics and the narrative out of there to separate us. I remember when our politicians went online during COVID and said, the unvaccinated are killing the vaccinated. How ludicrous is that?
Yeah.
I've got nothing against either group because it's freedom of choice. If you want to be vaccinated, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. But don't Don't start this problem with people that you're causing it. Oh, you're making the kapuna sick. See how they play on your emotions?
So how would you navigate
emotional,
that kind of a narrative if we had another COVID pandemic come up situation?
It's quite simple with me as mayor. There's no lockdowns. There's no masks. There's no social distancing because that's freedom of choice. If people want to put a mask on, go for it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be mandated. You want to be social distance. Look at social distancing. Go to a grocery store. Are the aisles 6 feet apart in one aisle? No, you're right. You're walking right next to the person. You can be 6 feet apart, front and back, but side to side, you're 2 inches apart. Okay. You go to a restaurant. If you go to the bathroom, you got to put your mask on, but you can come back and eat. Like these viruses are intelligent when it's not even a virus to begin with. We're so indoctrinated. When Margaret mentioned the education system and sexualization of our children, that came from the United Nations. That came from the WHO. That came from Joe Biden and their administration because they were lockstep in that agenda. And our politicians on this island are lockstep into that agenda. That's why we can't vote the same people in. One of my other opponents, Mel Raposo, he was on the police force, KPD. Then he went to be a special investigator. Then he went to county council. Well, he was special investigator during COVID. At that time, Lavana Lomer and myself and others from a group called For Our Rights brought the Fauci dossier to Mel Raposo, the special investigator, and said, you need to look into this. This is an opposing view, opposing story. No, they did nothing. In fact, 2 weeks later, he's working with Mark Zuckerberg, bringing N95 masks to our keiki in the schools, which actually made
us twice as much, I'm sure.
Which actually made the keiki sick. Okay, so now he wants to be your mayor. He called the people who are peacefully protesting jackasses, and that every one of them should be arrested, fined $5,000, and have their names put in the paper in shame. You want that man running your county who has alienated half the island already?
Where we have so many people.
Then you have during COVID Felicia Cowden, who is the head of safety, the head of public safety. Okay, a sign went up by the airport: Keiki, get vaccinated. She should have been, and all those county council people, when the therapeutic cures came out for COVID in lieu of the vaccine, should have made a public service announcement and informed the people that there are alternatives to taking the vaccine. Okay? No, they said nothing. And they called it, they're all running as people first candidates. That's the joke. None of them are people first. You let your people get sick, you let them get debilitating injuries and sometimes death. That is not people first. That's looking out for your own pocket. And those are the ones that voted themselves a raise. So we got to come in and we got to heal this island. We're in crisis management here, and housing and infrastructure and all of that. They want to put 1,600 more homes on the island of Kauai that we know of, okay? Our infrastructure is already taxed to the limit. 1,600 homes is going to bring 480,000 gallons of water a day. 2,000 or more toilets flushing, which our pipes are not going to be able to handle. Some of them are asbestos, okay? Asbestos carries its own health issues, okay?
Yeah.
We got a landfill that's filled to capacity. All we need to do is decentralize, go back to the MOKU system, but decentralized micro waste management systems in those MOKUs managed by the Kapuna Council and the local Konahiki as part of the extension of the county. It still is under the county, but not, because it needs to be managed daily. So there are people solutions that we can do, because all those things I mentioned are people taking back control. You didn't hear me mention government once taking control of this. It's all about the people. We don't need $400,000 homes. We can build houses for $100,000 or less. Okay. Is there land? Yeah, there's land available for the county, and there's state land available too, but the land belongs to the people. Hello? Okay. So
Exactly. It's for the
again,
people that's
if
why
you've
we're
got
here, yeah?
if you've got happy people on your island, you've got a happy island. If you're gonna, and we should not be importing, we should be exporting. So if we become island independent, now we grow small businesses, we grow entrepreneurs to fill the gaps that we have because of things we're importing again. We want to export our goods. We don't want our fruits and coming from other nations. We have it all here. We have the natural medicines all here.
Yeah.
And Kauai is the garden island. They're trying to turn us into a metropolitan. We're not
How
a
would
city. We're not.
how would you promote that in on your platform? Like independent. I know you're very much transparency and people being resilient and being prepared, right? So on an individual level, like you're going out and you're meeting with people in the community and you're hands-on, how would you promote that in a one-to-one, you know, in the community? What would you have them do to be more prepared and be more self-sustaining?
Well, again, it goes back to the neighborhood because each neighbor, just like each part of the island has its own personality here on
Yeah.
Kauai, you know, each neighborhood has its own personality as well. One size doesn't fit all. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I tried fitting into a size 0 once. It didn't work. Okay. One size doesn't fit all.
No, it really doesn't. It
So
really doesn't.
we have to use common sense. And the thing is,
Common sense is lost on some people, though, is what I found.
the people have been left out of the loop. So when you go to these county council meetings or these bill readings, they say, well, we got to let the people have testimony. The decision was already made before you even gave your first testimony.
Yeah.
They got to check a box. And one of it is you got to have public testimony. There are very few issues where the people actually win because it's a foregone conclusion, because the three departments are in sync together. The legislator, who's supposed to know the law, is the one that allowed the lockdowns, was allowed the fact that you can't go to church, you can't visit the sick, you can't go to a graduation, you can't do this, you can't do that. They called themselves essential people. Well, you just told me the county council didn't have any power, so how are you essential if you don't have any power?
Yeah.
The last time I checked, every family is essential to their own family. Right? We're all essential. And that's what people are losing, the fact that we're freely giving away rights that can't be given away or taken away because they didn't come from government. So if you remember, we developed the clean instrument in the Hawaii people scroll.
Absolutely.
The clean instrument was to remind them of their rights. And it was also and it was a public notice. It was also to remind government of their responsibility to the people, because the government belongs to the people. Okay.
It does. It really does.
And it outlined the very fundamental and basic rights, your unalienable rights and basic rights, parental authority, medical freedom, and all of that. Then we created the Hawaii People Scroll, where the people of Hawaii said, this is what we're standing under, our rights. And if you infringe and usurp upon them, we want to work with you. But if you continue to usurp them and infringe upon them, you're committing tyranny against the people. And we have the right to take back our government. Okay?
100%.
But the navigation is they constantly tell you, you can't do that, you can't do that. And then the judges are using their own overreach that don't allow the people's voice. They go with the corporations and the people. Now, that brings in a whole other area of human trafficking. Okay? We have a lot of trafficking on this island. You never see any arrests for human trafficking or fentanyl or those things. Okay? It took a sting in the dead of the night without KPD involved, where 44 people, illegals, were pulled off our island. And 2 of them were Tren de Aragua members from a terrorist organization. Okay? 2 houses they were renting because people turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to what's going on because they live in fear. Everything at us at the county level and the state level is fear. Fear is the killer. Fear is the controller. Emotional abuse is worse than any physical abuse. And that's what they've done to the people. They've dumbed us down. They don't want our children educated and informed. Okay? They don't want people, and you can go way back to statehood, when the Hawaiian people couldn't speak their language. That's emotional abuse. That's psychological abuse. That's trauma. Okay. So
and they've been traumatized for so long that they're conditioned to not ask questions, where they're not stepping up. They're not saying anything.
Well,
so how can we get people to get on board here?
The indoctrination got so far to the point where, remember they said that the missionaries brought the disease to the island. I go, then why are you taking an experimental vaccine? Why are you allowing this to happen? Because
those are great questions. They
went after our third eye, our cognitive thinking. Okay. They've dumbed us down to where we're actually soldiers. We're actually like ants in a village. That's why they want the housing to be affordable housing. That's why they want the smart cities. That's why they want electric vehicles, or even the solar. I mean, solar is going to be obsolete in another 5 or so. Everything goes in cycles, right? And so the big push for solar, it's good for the island for right now, but that's not the total answer. There are better ways to do things. And as a businessman, we're always looking for better ways to improve the quality of life, not only of the businesses, but of the people. Because if the people don't have money, they're not going to buy the products. So we want the majority of our products, goods, and services made right here in Hawaii or on Kauai.
Speaking of which, I was going to ask about tourism. Tourism's big in Hawaii, and incorporating that with quality tourism and being responsible in that. What is your vision for that?
Well, let's look at, obviously tourism is our main source of income, right? But it also affects the infrastructure as well.
Exactly.
So one thing they worry about here is traffic flow. Okay. We could
traffic like car traffic, or are we talking children and women
car
and
traffic,
traffic?
Car traffic.
Just clarifying.
Okay, sorry.
Because they're both big issues here.
So when you look at traffic jams, for example, in Kauai, it's usually six to 9 in the morning, maybe 7 to 9, and then 4 to 6 in the afternoon, going from Kapa'a to Lahui, and Lahui back to Kapa'a, and then the south side, coming to work in Lahui and going back at night. Yeah, we should have commuter parking lots. So have transportation services, not the county transportation, but services that bring the people to work.
Yeah, good old fashioned buses and carpooling. Right.
So their
cars. It's not like we got to go that far.
Their cars will still be there. So they want to shop at night. They're just brought back to the parking lot, and now they can do their thing, but they're not tied up in traffic. So when you look at tours, and back to the United Nations, they're always talking about the carbon footprint. Well, what's the biggest carbon footprint on the island of Kauai? Tourism, because of the planes and the cars. The planes and the cars produce the most carbon, and we need carbon to survive. But so what are you going to do? Shoot yourself in the foot? Because climate change is not an issue. Climate change is not a problem. It's a hysteria. They want to block the sun. When they block the sun, we're all dead. We need sunlight.
We do.
And that's what the whole agenda is, depopulation. And locally, they're doing it to get all the locals off the island. Margaret mentioned that most of them live in Las Vegas. Well, that's the intent. Get all the locals out of here so they can confiscate all the land and use it for their special interest projects, their government special pet projects, all for the United Nations. We need to break the chains of the United Nations. We need to stop the program dead in its tracks. And as mayor of Kauai, I have to stand up to that, and the people need to stand with me on that issue. We're tired of being locked down. We're tired of being dictated to. Our cost of living is not improving. Our quality of life is deteriorated. And it's because of the same leadership. 3 of my opponents have been in this for 10 to 16 years, or up to 20 years. Okay. They haven't done anything to fix the problem. They're not people first people. Yes, they go out there in their sheep's clothing as they're serving the special interest. And they're, like Susie pointed out, they're telling you all these wonderful things they're going to do for you. And they're at every event that's taken place, but behind the scenes, and they'll say in private, well, I'm really on your side. Well, if you're really on my side as a politician, why aren't you making a public announcement on local television, in the Garden Island newspaper, and all the media warning the people? Well, like the mayor said in the 22 debate, well, if I don't obey the governor, I'm going to lose my job. Well, obviously, you're not a people first person. You're worried about
Doesn't the mayor
job.
have more purview than the governor?
So here is again the people. They're not worried about the people's jobs or the people's livelihoods or how people can afford to put gas in their car or food on their table. All they care about is a Band-Aid approach to add more housing on an infrastructure that can't handle it. We can provide more housing on it, but we have to manage the infrastructure properly.
Yeah.
I don't mind developers making money, but right now the developers have really no cost. All those costs get passed on to the taxpayer when you start putting in the site cost. They need to pay their fair share. My objective is to lower the tax burden on the homeowners, on the people, on the small businesses. We should have regulatory relief for small business. We should have incentive and rewards programs.
Yep.
We should shift our education to do project-based learning education and vocational learning education to prepare people for the needs that we have to fill for this island to become island independent, not relying on the outside. So sovereignty, that gets me too when I hear people say, we're a democracy. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. And the Hawaiian Kingdom was a republic as well, because the republic honors the individual, their rights that came to them from God. Okay? And even in the Declaration of Independence, it says we're under the laws of nature and of nature's God. Because as humans, we are nature. We need to be one with nature. Malaman Aina. Come on. It's all here. We don't need government. I'm running for mayor, but I'm not running for government because I told you they're a corporation. A politician doesn't know how to run a corporation. A businessman does. And I'm a former businessman who's helped grow small business, mom and pop operations, large businesses, medium-sized businesses, because I know what it takes. Happy employees, happy customers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, exactly. Happy wife, happy life kind of thing, right?
Have you ever heard the saying, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
Yeah, I've really questioned that along my path,
Recording in progress.
And I called them, I took them to court. I'm in a federal case with them way back from that time, letting them know you cannot disenfranchise people from their rights.
No,
you can try.
Really can't.
You can try.
So how do you get people to collaborate with you on this? I mean, we've been pushing, your voice and legal.
It's education. Yeah, it's education, Victoria.
Okay.
People need to be on these forums constantly. Gary's got his show, he said, a radio show. We need more podcasts. We need more accessibility. When they say people don't have access to go vote, that's a load of crap. Okay. The only people that need to do mail-in voting outside of the military and stuff is that people who are housebound.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you that there are people who say they can't go to vote, that go to the grocery store. They'll go to the library. They'll go to other places, but they can't seem to have the ability to go to the voting booth. And that should be done at the neighborhood level.
I agree,
At the
100%.
neighborhood centers, and it should be with voter ID. But
And
we
we're
have
in an
other,
era of technology and change. I mean, you were on with, we had Michael Proper on, right? Well, decentralizing and digital voting on encryption and blockchain. It's like the technology, it's there. We have the land here in Hawaii. We should be able to self-sustain and be safe, you know,
I want to
digitally.
bring up another thing because you mentioned digital.
Okay.
As far as I can tell, out by the airport, that looks like the footprint for a data center. And a data center, a medium-sized data center on the island would be another 390,000 gallons of water a day, at least. At least.
Isn't that a conspiracy though too? Because we don't really need the data centers.
Data center concept is popping up all over the world right now because of the United Nations. This is their last hurrah, if you would. Get all these programs in place quickly, get them in place because it's all money laundering. It's all money. They think they're going to buy their way into heaven when they're really going the other direction.
My data is right here on my phone. I don't need a big building down the street to hold my data. I can hold it right here, you know? Like how much are people, I mean, do you really see that in Kauai, that people actually believe that these things are there to help them?
I think the indoctrination is so deep that, yeah, they see the benefit because they only think about the traffic, most of them. Trying to get to the airport or trying to get to Costco or someplace. Costco, for our farmers, I mean, Costco should be buying all their produce from local farmers, not from outside. Safeway, same thing. We need to have partnerships and contracts with all the stores that you're buying local. Local first is the first option. If we don't have it, yeah, you can go outside. But if we have it, you need to buy local because that's what fuels the economy. So if our people, again, have money in their pockets, they're going to spend it buying locally made products, locally made goods and services. And now the county's going to thrive as well. Okay, and all that. So everybody wins. It's a win-win situation, but the system is set up for the people to lose, period, full stop. So the only way it changes is when people realize their own authority. And I've been trying to empower. I don't try. I educate. I share knowledge. I don't tell people what to do. But authority is what people need, their own authority. The word authority has AU. AU in the periodic table is gold. Each individual is gold. And that's why government uses us as a commodity. They buy and sell us to cover the debt. Okay? Dating way back to the original war.
Yeah.
So the United States became a corporation. Actually, it started in 1861 behind closed doors. And then it became fully entrenched in 1871. So when people say, and I understand the sovereignty movement because I'm involved with those people as well, and that is that, you know, we want our island back. We're occupied. We're overthrown. Well, my country was overthrown 23 years before yours.
Wow.
By the corporations, by the central bank, by the 5 businessmen that literally overthrew your island 23 years later using a mercenary army and a Congress that was bought and paid for. So every nation can make that claim that they've been overthrown in some manner. Every island, almost every island nation was lost in that 1871 Organic Act. Again, a systematic thing. You know, we need to return to the sovereignty of all nations, where people take care of their own people first, their own island first, their own neighborhood first, their own community first. You have to stop putting yourself first. It's not wrong to put yourself first. Just don't infringe. Get to know your neighbor. Most of us don't even know who our neighbor is.
That's my community watch group. You know, it's like, I know my neighbors. I take care of my neighbors. You help your neighbors. Like, that's where it's supposed to be at. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we get infiltrated, because we don't know our neighbors. We don't know there's a terrorist living next to us. We don't even know right now, but it does exist. Sharia law is now coming on the island, or in the island of Kauai. That has nothing to do with the Constitution. That has nothing to do with anything. It's another indoctrination. It's another danger of forcing people to believe in an ideology that you don't believe in.
Yeah.
Freedom of religion, freedom of choice. Again, we don't need people to come in and change the laws that we have, because the law of the land, the supreme law of the land, protects those rights. And the courts have to step up, and we got to get them out, because a lot of our judges are not even citizens. They've come from other countries. They're appointed or put in. That has to stop. We have to stop. We have to stop the bleeding.
We really do. Yeah.
I'm not, I sound maybe like an alarmist, but this is all true. This is all factual with receipts that can back it up. So
Yeah.
I want those people who believe in all this climate stuff and indoctrination, bring me the receipts.
Yeah.
How it's actually improved the quality of life of anybody. This is all a big money making operation. COVID, who made money during COVID? The pharmaceutical companies, the mask companies, all those companies had nothing to do with it.
Respirator companies.
The big box stores could stay open, but mom and pop had to close. Right?
Exactly, right?
And they've never recovered because of that.
Just sad.
But
it's really sad.
Big box didn't have to worry about that. We're here to protect the people. The people are small business. The people are local entrepreneurs. The people are attached to local foods independence. Okay?
Yeah.
That's all we need. The Hawaiian people were the most educated and self-reliant, resilient people on the face of the earth before things changed.
I have one last question for you. And then if we have any panel members who have questions, Megeso, would you come back to hashtag town hall specifically to talk about your clean instrument, Hawaii People's Scroll, and the memorandum of law that you put together? I was very impressed with all of that.
If people are interested in those topics, absolutely.
Awesome. Absolutely. I would love to do a one-on-one with you and give you like more of a platform for that, because you're doing a lot of awesome things.
Yeah, that memorandum of law is really powerful, because it puts our politicians on notice, not only in their official capacity, because they will claim immunity in their official capacity. So we put them on their individual capacity as well. Okay, I'll just give you one.
Use that.
I'll just give you one law. Title 42, Section 1986, failure to act. So when people knew that there was a hoax or things going on, it was their duty and obligation to report it. And if you didn't report it, you broke the law. And people need to be held accountable. And I'm all about accountability. Transparency is an overused word. You need to be open and transparent. I believe your words and actions should match. And I judge people by the words they speak and the numbers that are out there. Not judge, but evaluate, because only God can judge. And we need to remember faith, family, and freedom.
Amen. Firmly believe that. And it looks like Susie's got a question. Are you able to unmute, Susie?
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. You
Alrighty,
are live.
Again, you know, one of the things that everyone touched on too, that's just is so what makes Hawaii unique to, say, the mainland and other nations, is because being an archipelago that's far removed and fractured, as you know, dotted islands, you know, across out in the middle of the Pacific like that. The oversight is very little oversight. There's no one to really look at the corruption and you know, and do anything about it, because you know the governments are even split up, you know. So these islands have been able to operate the corruption with absolutely, you know, no oversight, no control issues, and just go rampant on that. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's been such a great, besides being the pearl of the Pacific and everybody wants to use it as their elite playing ground, why it's, you know, been just so rife for corruption and overtake. And then on top of that, you know, you try to bring some of this accountability, and you've got to capture judicial system. And I know Megeso could talk a lot about that. So all I just want to tack onto that really quick is one thing that we've seen for a number of years that have been a real problem. And I would really love to get to the bottom of this. I know Megeso would too, and probably Gary and Margaret. People have been getting one-way tickets to come here for a number of years from mainland municipalities, you know, homeless, problems, you know, crime, whatever, criminals. They're being, these municipalities have been cutting deals with somebody on this side, on the island side, to look the other way while they get off the planes and they come and they set up their camps here and their drugs and everything else that's going on. So there's some deliberate behavior. And then, of course, the courts are looking the other way. So, you know, do you have any insight into this, you know, where this is coming from, how this is happening? And you know, certainly we've got to have some at the airports watching for this.
Well, we started to talk about it earlier, and that is how many of the homeless are really Hawaiian residents or Hawaii
Exactly.
residents. And when the police go out there and check their IDs and stuff, we should know. And if they're not from this island and they're homeless, they should probably go back to the state they came from.
Absolutely.
They shouldn't be getting our homes or our benefits or things like that, because anyone who's not part of our resident here is taking away from the locals.
Yes.
They're taking away jobs, they're taking away housing, they're taking away benefits that belong to the people. So we're not as bad off as we would be if all those laws were being enforced. They're actually on the book, okay? And we could be abundant, we can be thriving just by getting rid of the cancer. I mean, come on. We poison our food. We have toxins in our food, toxins in our packaging of the food. We have toxins in our water. We have toxins in the air. We have toxins in the land. You get rid of the poisons, which are now going into the human being. So you're actually poisoning the human being. So where they're losing their rational thought because they got so many toxins in them. If we just cleaned up the toxins, we'd probably be a lot happier and healthier too. And we wouldn't be fighting. Everything feeds off each other.
I agree, 100%. And if we have no more questions, we are going to thank you for obviously visiting us as mayoral candidate and giving us your perspective. And we're going to go ahead and switch over to